is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Speed Limit 155 podcast. My name is Trey here in Arkansas, and we're joined tonight by our good friend Chris with Clover Tack. He's in Texas, East Texas, and our history goes back, I don't know, gosh, almost 6, 7 years now. And we both have our main channels are more firearm related and gun industry stuff, and we became friends and all that. And we both got a lot of different ventures going on in our lives, and you can see that his avatar and all that says Clover Tech Cards, and one of his channels is a trading card, sports card, not necessarily a sports card, but a trading card channel. So if you like cards and all, he does a great live stream every now and then on Thursdays when he's got time, and they do a lot of breaks and all that stuff. So what's going on, Chris? How you doing, man?
I mean,
So
not a lot.
yeah,
Good to be here. It's a good night for a car chat, considering the morning I had. I guess
yeah, that's right. You had to take the car into the shop, didn't you? I
had
forgot
to go
about that.
had to go into the dealership. Yeah, yeah.
What all they ended up doing anything or just basic checkup and all that?
Yeah. I don't even remember, to be honest. I know it was oil and rotate,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
and then I want to say maybe fuel injection system flush.
Okay, okay.
Maybe, yeah, just some routine, preventative maintenance type stuff. Taking that thing out on the road like we do.
Yeah.
Um,
Nothing majorly wrong though, huh?
no, 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 not at all.
Yeah, that's good.
But yeah, taking it out on the road. One of the good things about getting it into the dealership and everything is they've got like a 68 point inspection, and that includes tuning on the computer and all kinds
Yeah.
of crazy stuff like that you can't do yourself, unfortunately.
Right. So people out
Well,
there might be talking about what car, and I know we talked about this in the last podcast, but if you didn't catch it, what car are you talking about that you guys are taking on as your road trip car kind of right now?
it's the Kia Forte ES, but it's a little more than the Kia Forte ES.
Yeah, it
It's
can
a
go. It
it's
can
a
go.
disservice calling it that. I actually found out something really cool today about it. Um, that you and I had talked, and we had. I told you all the people since we've gotten that have tried to buy it from me, and every time I go in
Hmm.
the dealership to get service, they just beg me to sell it to them, and you know get into something else, and blah blah blah, and they tell me they got people looking for that car, and so I decided to walk around the lot today, um, and kill some time. Normally
I mean, you're gonna be there. You might as well, right?
normally I'll catch a ride and I'll go somewhere and eat breakfast and all that, but I've been trying to do good on the diet thing, so um, just walking around the lot. So
Sure, sure.
got to look at a lot of cool cars, and then went into the showroom, and of course you could really sit in them and play with them and check them out that way. And one of the salesmen come up. I've never met this particular guy, and we got to talking, and he did not believe when I was describing. He's like, "Well, what do you got back there in service?" And I told him, and he did not. He absolutely 100% did not believe that was a 2019 Kia Forte ES. He's like, that car didn't come with those options. I'm like, hey, my car
Mine
did come
did.
with those
Yeah,
options, right? And it was
I didn't add
amazing.
them.
Yeah. So he got so anyway, the service, I hung around there a little while after the service was over, actually, because I drove it around front. They got the service finished, and pulled it out front of the service area. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to pull up in the front over there, and I'm going to run in there if he's here, if he's still there. And it proved to him. And so anyway, I went in, and he's like, oh, come out and pop the hood, pop the trunk. He looked up under, he did all that stuff. He's like, I've never seen one. He said, I've never
Really?
seen one. And he's like, have you got to go? You got to get back to work? Or I'm like,
Like that color or some of the
like, not
options or
really.
what?
Like the color, the options, like that package, right?
You're right,
Talking
sure.
about the
Okay.
package of the car, right?
Because I know you
And
said last time is the color is not a common color, the burnt
yeah,
orange.
so here's the breakdown. He went back in, and he got on the computer, and I'm guessing he has access to Kia records and some different things and whatever. And he was looking some stuff up. He's asking me questions, and he's like, and I was like, I told him the same thing. I'm like, man, I could 3 or 4 of your salesmen that hit me up every single time I'm in here to try to buy it back, and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, but I never really paid any attention. I said that one of the service managers, when I first started taking the dealership, told me that basically it was a GT without being a GT.
Sure. Yeah.
And he said, well,
And
kinda.
I've ridden in it, and I can see that.
He said, kinda. He said Kia did not make a GT until 2020, not 2019. And in 2020, Kia come out with 3 different GTs. They started, I should say, right? Started. They still make them.
Sure. Yeah.
They make the GT line, which is a GT with a special trim package, basically. They make
Okay.
GT and they make the GT2. And really, the only difference between the GT and the GT2 is the manual transmission.
Okay.
Um,
Like when you say manual, you're not talking about like the automatic
no,
manual.
we're not talking about
It's
paddle
an
shift,
actual
like
stick.
legit stick. Yeah, yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Like an actual shifter.
An
Nice.
actual shifter, 3 pedals. Yeah,
Man, that'd be kind
and
of cool in that
and
car.
so yeah, no kidding. And anyway, so basically, what this is they they were toying with the idea of creating the GT series, right?
Yeah.
And the first in that GT series is what they call the GT line. That's basically the low end GT. I'm not gonna say that I've got
Yeah.
something
Sure.
awesome or anything. So it is the lowest of the GT line. But he said basically Kia was toying around with the idea. This is the best info he could come up with quickly. In 2019, or going into that design year, right?
Right.
Kia was toying with the idea, and so they sent some models fully loaded as far as the EX model, like all the options, right? They
Sure.
put every option from Kia on it, and then they required the dealers that accepted them to put another $6,000 to $7,000 worth of special dealer options on. Like you have to add this and add that and add this and that
Right. Different trims and all that stuff.
specific things, right, from
Yeah.
specific vendors.
So basically, they were just kind of like experimenting and
Yeah,
seeing
so
if it went
it's a
well.
yeah, it is essentially a 2019 GT line. It's
Right.
just it wasn't really built by Kia. It was built by Kia and the dealerships.
Right.
And
Right.
so on top of there only being a select number that were sent out to dealerships to have that done, there was an even smaller number in the color that mine's in. Like
Right. Yeah.
mine is absolutely the rarest color of any Kias period in
And
2019.
being a Texas kid myself and a Longhorn fan, I do enjoy the
That
burnt
burnt
orange.
orange, man.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is a pretty
it's
color.
just a cool color. It's easy to
It is.
recognize.
It is, and unfortunately, it's a color that, well, fortunately, you haven't had any problems, but it is a color that can be noticed relatively easily by
This
the
is true.
popo.
This is true.
But it's okay. But no, we've had some fun adventures in that. I get to ride in it every year when we're in Vegas. You drive to Vegas for SHOT Show, and I get to basically hitch a ride for the week. But we've also taken some road trips and had some fun and all that. So it's a fun car. I've been doing something with the Jarhead podcast with I call the Pit, where it's kind of rapid fire, and you're doing it with your podcast as well. It's kind of a fun little thing.
Yeah,
So I thought I might run through a little bit with you here. Um, Manual or automatic?
manual.
Yeah. New car or an old car?
At this point, new car.
Okay. All right. That's a little surprising because I know that your
But
history
that
with
Kia has
older
ruined me,
cars.
dude. Like
I'm telling you.
I've had a GTO, I had a 68 GTO. I've had, several things. We talked about, I think, on the last podcast, matter of fact.
You still got the Mustang out
But
there.
oh my God, yeah, still got the Mustang here. I'm gonna get running and back on the road and all that eventually and play around with. But um, yeah, man, with this Kia and especially looking into the Stingers and those Stinger, I did not realize. And I know it's supposed to be rapid fire. I need
Oh,
to
it's
shut
all
the hell
good.
up.
No, that's what it's all about.
But the Stingers are a hatch, and I didn't realize that until
Yeah,
today.
yeah, yeah.
Like I've
Okay,
never paid
interesting.
enough attention, and I'm like,
I don't know if I've never paid
oh,
attention, but I don't know if
they
I've ever seen
are.
a Kia hatchback. I've
They're a
never seen one.
four-door hatch, dude. It's
Interesting.
wild. Yeah. Anyway,
Interesting.
yeah, I would have said prior to this Kia, I'd have probably said, oh, right, muscle car or something. But
Right. Do
ah,
you like
man,
convertibles or coupes?
coupes. Yeah, I'm not a convertible fan.
Yeah,
I do
sports.
not
Yeah,
like. I do not like the. And I'm ruining the past. I need to shut up.
it's all good. I don't care. Go ahead. It, it's a
I
fun
don't.
time to talk, man.
This is a weird thing, right? I don't like it. Now, if it's a convertible hardtop, that's different
Yeah,
than a
sure.
soft
Yeah, a
top,
soft
right?
top. Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't like the way a soft top looks going down the road. It looks stupid. It bubbles out for the from the air pressure and the whatever,
yeah,
and I just hate it. Now, if it's a hard top or removable top of some sort,
yeah,
that's a different story. But anyway,
yeah. Um, I said, did I say sports car or SUV?
you didn't, but it would be sports car. Not a big fan
Sports
of
car.
SUVs.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
And the last one is going to be dream car. If you could, if you had the money, what's a dream car?
Man, right now, and this is gonna sound stupid, but one of those Kia Stingers, man,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
and maybe even the GT2 and that freaking Forte, like
Yeah.
with the manual transmission.
I'm telling
Um,
you, if Kia's listening, get a hold of Clover. He is, you
I
know,
will
he's
shill
got a
for
couple of
everything.
different channels. He's got
Will
sponsorships available for his
right,
podcast. Kia,
right.
come on with it. Bring
Will
it.
will shill for anyone at clovertac.com, and that'll get you in the door. Yeah. Um, I don't know. I mean, there's lots of supercars and things, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know models and stuff very well.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to realize that it's kind of like the card thing. You're
Yeah.
talking about back in the day, with in the '90s, with Vets and Trans Ams
Yeah.
and the Countach and the 911s and the stuff like that. But
Yeah.
the newer stuff, I'm not up to speed as much on that.
Yeah.
The
I tell
McLarens
you,
are cool, but
McLarens are badass.
I hear they're really, really rough as
Yeah,
far as
well,
the
they're race cars.
yeah,
They're literal race cars that they try to put on the street. So suspensions and all of
yeah,
that, it's
yeah,
just not conducive. And as far as like modern supercars, I think the sexiest looking modern supercar is the Bugatti.
yeah,
The Gaudis I think they're just beautiful.
yeah,
I'm a huge fan of the Lamborghini, like Murcielagos.
yeah,
Diablos are pretty cool, but the Mercies are just beautiful, beautiful
yeah.
cars.
The Diablos I like, yeah.
Diablos are nice, but I think like my dream car, it's crazy. Um, I mean, I was talking with Chase about this a week or two ago, and we were just talking about different things. And he's a kind of a car guy. He's got a link. I know he's at a show. He's working, so he may or may not. I think he and John are going out tonight actually.
He's
So
working on that bourbon. Is what he's working on.
I guarantee he and John are working on something. And anyways, but we were talking, and like my dream car, and it's crazy. Like the cheapest one that I've found is like it's in like good working, not like perfect, but like you know runs and good. It's like 175 grand. Most of them are well over 200 grand.
Yeah.
Is like an old like 1958, 57, 58 Porsche
Uh
356 Speedster.
oh
I love the old speedsters, and I am a convertible guy.
yeah.
I had the 1990 Mustang 50 GT convertible, and I had that for a long time until
Hmm.
probably about 10 years ago. And but I'm a soft top guy. No, I'm not saying I don't like a hard top convertible.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this. The convertibles that I've had in my life have all been soft top, and I love them. But I
Hmm.
will say this: there are a lot of extra noises that come along with soft tops. A lot of creaking, a lot of
Oh
wind.
yeah.
Not
Yeah.
necessarily wind noise inside, but you know you can hear the wind, especially at higher speeds, a lot more than you can in a hard top because there's really nothing
Right.
blocking,
Right. Well, then
buffering
there's a
that wind
little
noise.
bit of insulation in the hardtop
I
too.
mean,
Not a lot, but
there's
there's
a
a
lot
little.
more than a soft top.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
But
Yeah.
I think that if I had a dream car and I had the money for $200,000, yeah, I could go get me a Porsche. I could go get me probably a 10-year-old like Murcielago or Diablo Lamborghini for a couple hundred thousand that's in decent running order.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think if I had to, it sounds crazy. Like I'm looking,
Well.
you know, you're talking like that old 356. You're talking like a 1.8 liter, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
pushing maybe 150 horsepower, and you're turning that, you're taking that over a 600 horsepower Murcielago or
Yeah.
you know, a Porsche GT3 or something. It's crazy, but I think that
Yeah, but
that's there's
yeah.
something sexy about that, man.
No,
You
I
think
get
about
it.
James Dean and all these guys.
Yeah,
These guys back in the day drove that car.
yeah. Well, to take it a completely different path, but
Yeah,
a similar surface, let's say, completely different road, similar top. Um, you know, I've always kind of wanted, or for some time now, and holy Jesus, the prices on them is the problem.
yeah.
A 70s model uh, Ford F, did they even, yeah, 70s model Ford F-150
Okay.
in a super cab, four-wheel drive, long bed.
Oh, the long bed.
The
Yeah,
long bed super cab, four-wheel drive. Not the quad cab,
that
not a
was
quad,
well.
but a
That was
super
before the
cab.
quad cab, wasn't it?
Yeah, 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 yeah. They didn't
Yeah,
have a
yeah. It
quad
was
cab
still a
at that
two
time.
door. It was
Yeah,
just.
yeah.
I
They didn't have
remember.
the
I remember. This is like in the mid '80s, so it was
yeah,
probably like maybe a 7, 8, 10-year-old truck at that point.
yeah,
And he'd had it the whole time. It was my neighbor had one of those, and
yeah.
I think it was a beast, bro. I think it was an absolute
Yeah,
beast.
but I would want it. I would want it set up a certain way. So I mean, the
You
odds
want it
of
jacked up or what?
yeah, I do. I would want it lifted, right? I would definitely want it lifted.
Yeah,
I wouldn't want stock wheels and tires, obviously, on it.
sure.
So
Put some mutters on there, so
it
like
would
some
need
Mickey Thompsons or something.
it would need some type of lift. No, some good, really good Biff Goodrich all terrains or something like
Okay, yeah,
that. At the
sure.
very least, right?
So it still runs
Um,
smoothly on the roads.
Something that gets, decent you get decent wear out of them, maybe,
Yeah,
and that sort of stuff. It's not for a mud we're not talking a mud truck. Like a mud buggy, I mean, sure. I mean, if you found a beater of some sort,
yeah,
I mean, make a mud buggy out of that. But we're talking about cherry, redo the interior, redo,
yeah,
all of that kind of stuff, and you're not gonna wanna get that in the mud. So,
yeah.
um, but yeah, I mean, they're 40, 50 grand.
Are
You
they
get on
really?
like yeah, you get on like eBay and look at those 70 model Fords and stuff.
Wow.
And I mean, they are so for and that's pretty much restored, factory type condition, you
Yeah,
know, Fords, right? Or pickups. Beaters, obviously you can find a beater or something like that. But if you got to do a ton of body work and you got to, do all this other stuff.
right.
But man, those are just though you don't there's something you don't see. You don't see
Yeah,
this the super cab. You see a lot of 70 models around still, but you don't see the super cab four-wheel drives very often,
yeah.
especially the long beds very often.
I tell you, speaking of pickups, something that I like pickups. I've never owned one. I almost bought one a few years ago. I almost bought a Tacoma.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Decided not to, but I just I my lifestyle I don't need a pickup, and shit, pickups are. I mean, a Tacoma is going to start you at 50 or 60 these days. I mean, it's like it's
Yeah.
crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
And you're better
Um,
off going Tundra from what I hear
yeah, yeah, and
nowadays.
I tell you what, the Nissan Titan's a good looking truck
Oh
too
yeah, yeah, yeah.
for
The
a full
Titans are solid.
size. Yeah,
Yeah. I've got an uncle
but
that's got a Titan and it's rock solid, man.
yeah,
Great,
I
great
like those
pickup.
things. But I was watching, and I'm not a huge fan of Leno at all. But Jay Leno's Garage is a pretty fun channel every now and then. He gets some cool stuff on there. And I don't remember. I was watching something, an episode, and I don't remember who he was going to go see. I don't remember. But he rolls up in like a '77 or '78 Chevy pickup,
Mhm.
and it was decked out. It was all white with maybe like some maroon trim. It was actually pretty sharp looking.
Oh yeah.
But he had converted it to electric, and it was running like 650, 700 horsepower.
I imagine so.
Um, Electric. It was going 0 to 60 in like 3.2
Late
or something.
late
It was
70s.
late. It's like a 77, 78.
Okay.
You can probably Google Jay
Okay.
Leno like '70s electric
Yeah.
pickup.
Yeah.
Dude, oh my God. I mean, there's
Wow.
no telling how much he spent, although he doesn't care. But
No.
I was like, wow, for him to, I mean, how much money do you
That's
have to
kind of neat.
spend to take that truck and make it electric? Is pretty
And
crazy,
it and it makes you wonder what type of, range you get when you got that kind of weight as well.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, it's definitely not a road trip vehicle. It's
Yeah,
definitely drive
it's
around
around town.
town and all that, and
Yeah,
then make sure you come and charge it. He didn't say. If he did, I don't remember. I just
yeah,
remember. I honestly, I wasn't listening to a damn thing he was saying except for like some of the specs of it, and I was like, oh my God, that's
yeah.
that's pretty cool.
My,
I was impressed with it.
one of the very first vehicles I ever drove, and even drove to school, played around in the mud, work truck, you name it. My
Sure.
dad bought a C10 four-wheel drive in
Nice.
uh, in, it was a '79,
Yeah.
if I'm thinking correctly. Um, White, and man, that thing was a beast.
Yeah.
Golly, that was a
Yeah.
beast of a truck, and he eventually he had it forever, and I don't know how many times engine's been rebuilt and everything else on the
Right.
thing, um, but he ended up trading it for he needed ended up we got into a bunch of tractors and equipment and stuff, and he ended up
Yeah.
trading it for a 1 ton to be able to better pull the equipment and stuff.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
The
You gotta
one
have.
ton just done a little better than that truck. Not that that truck couldn't do it, but the 1 ton's made for that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, there's those late model Chevrolets. I'm not the biggest Chevrolet guy, but you really start
I'm
losing
not
me with
either.
that.
I'm
Like
not either.
the I'm okay in the late '70s and then through the '80s,
Yep.
you
Sure.
know. But when they got into the '90s and then on up, they really kind of lost me. And quite honestly, with Chevrolet, the biggest thing that drove me mad with Chevrolets was transmissions. Like,
Yeah.
um, I don't know how many people I've seen with burned up transmissions from trying to tow or pull or haul, with Chevrolets.
Yeah. I don't know if that's something that were their specs, like their towing capacity, were they wrong? Were they just
I don't
were
know,
they too
something with the
aggressive
gears.
on some of those, or was just the transmission just really wasn't that good? I don't know.
Yeah, something with a mesh up from the transmission to the differential, or something
Yeah.
in it. I'm sure you could probably change something out or get some options or
Yeah.
do something. And we're talking when they switched over in the whatever that was, late '80s, early '90s.
Yeah.
Switched over to that body styles when you really started to see that happen with Chevrolets. And I was kind of indifferent up until that point, quite honestly. But I was really forward at that point. I was like, and then it's hard to beat a Ford front end. It's hard. It's always been that way with twin I beam and on up and
Yeah.
and uh, and AC. Man, I've with Ford AC. I've literally had Fords that have sat in pastures for a decade. Pull
Right.
them out, get them running,
And they
and
still could
you
cold.
kick on the AC and they blow cold air. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and you're like,
Yeah.
how in the heck, man? Like the compressor hoses are almost
You
rotted
know,
off.
you bring that,
But
and
they
I
work.
never thought about that with that 90 Mustang. We got it in the 90 model. We got it in like 91, 92. I think maybe 92.
Yeah.
My dad did, and I got to drive it, to high
Oh, it
school
was
every now
cold
and
air. It's
then.
cold air in the Mustang.
And we had it until literally 10 years ago,
Yeah.
because my daughter was turning 16 and her best friend. We had two Mustangs at the time. We had a 65 and a 90,
Yeah.
and we ended up getting rid of both of them because two of her friends both loved them, and we're like, okay, well, we're not using them, go ahead
Yeah.
and let someone
Sure.
else enjoy them.
Yep.
But I remember, like, literally, like from 19, let's say 90, when that car was made, until like literally 2013,
Hmm.
like we never had anything worked on the AC. And that
Yep.
that
Yeah.
fricker still ran cold. I didn't even think
Yeah.
about that till you said that. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
we never had to do
Yeah.
work on the AC at all.
Ford, man. I don't know what it is. I don't know what they do, but yeah, it's crazy. And Mustangs are one. Don't take much in a Mustang anyway. To
Yeah,
be
no,
honest, there's
no.
not a lot of room in there. You know what I mean? Low roof
Ooh,
and everything else. And so,
yeah.
um, if you've got
If you want
your
to call it a
standard,
back seat, it's not a standard back seat, so it's
right,
pretty compact in there.
right.
Yeah,
So there's not a lot to cool down, and Mustangs are fairly well insulated. You're talking about road noise and other things
yeah,
like that
yeah.
earlier. Fair for the size that they are, for the size and the weight that they are. And we're talking, older stuff. I don't know anything about necessarily the ones made in the last few years, but
Either
um,
I've never been in one of the new models. I've
you know,
never ridden in
early
one.
mid early 2000s on back anyway. Mustangs. I've got quite a
Yeah,
bit of experience, and they're not that bad. They're fairly quiet, except for the convertibles, like you mentioned.
sure, sure.
Uh, they're fairly quiet.
Yeah, there's always something. Like I said, I love convertibles. There's a lot of extra noises, and I guess I'm just so used to it because I've always I've always kind of had a convertible in my life since I've been driving,
Yeah,
and so I'm just kind of
yeah,
used to it. Like even like the BMW, it's got little little noises inside when you're driving. I don't pay attention to that.
Well,
My wife will sit there and say it's kind of loud in here. I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, I
yeah.
guess, you know.
Well, and you'll remember this. I mean, I forgot what we did. We had to do something. Was it pick up somebody from the airport? I can't remember what we had to do, but um, when we were in Vegas, and I popped the sunroof and all.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
And very rarely do I even do that.
Right, yeah,
Um, I'm okay at night, but there's something about that I can't handle it in the day. Like I just
yeah,
the sun coming in, it's weird. It messes. I don't like it, and so I
yeah.
think that's probably why I'm not big on convertibles.
I don't know. Just something I've always loved. So I grew up. See, my dad. I grew up with my dad having a bunch of Datsun Z cars.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And a 240, 260, then 280ZX. Well, 280ZX, I remember very, very little about the 260
mm,
because I was really young, like, less than 5,
yeah,
and but I remember the 280ZX. We had that up until I was probably like 14 or 15,
right,
and those had T-tops. And he always, like, my dad was gone every week, so he left every Monday morning and traveled and then go home like Friday. But on weekends, he always had that out. And it always had the T-tops off. In Dallas, it hardly ever rains, especially in the summertime. It's just blazing hot. So
right.
we always had the T-tops off. So I kind of grew up with kind of like, it wasn't
That
a
kind of
convertible,
thing.
obviously, but
Yeah.
that just having the sun in
Open
your
top.
head and
Yeah,
open top and
yeah,
having the wind blowing. And so that's kind
yeah,
of, I guess that was the beginning, is those old
yeah,
T-tops in the Z car,
yeah. I get it. I get it.
Yeah,
Because I
speaking of
thought about at one time I forgot what I was doing, but I was doing something, having something done, and it was one of my Daytona Shelbys that I had. I had two of those,
yeah.
and one of those one time I was in Pep Boys, and
Oh, Pet Boys.
I know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Are
yeah,
they still around?
Manny Mo and Jack.
They're not
Um,
here in Arkansas. Are they still around
as
down there?
I think so. I think
Okay, I
so.
just haven't seen a Pet Boys
I
forever.
don't know that, but I think so.
Right.
But I was there doing oh, I remember what it was. It was I was getting a uh like a Holly 650 or a Holly 750. I was picking up one for something, some engine I was building for something. I don't know what it was at this point. But anyway, they had one and was went in to get that, and they were went in through the service entrance or whatever, went in that way because it was didn't have to walk all through the store, and they were cutting the roof of a car, and I'm like, what in the world are they doing? And they were putting T-tops in a car.
They were cutting the roof? Okay,
They
to
were
install
literally
T-tops.
cutting the roof and all to install T-tops. And
Interesting.
I don't remember what car it is, but I remember going, y'all, you can do that? And they're like, oh yeah, we
Yeah,
can do that.
I didn't know you
And
could.
I contemplated, uh, and ultimately the cost versus I really didn't care for the open top
Yeah,
experience, but
yeah.
I contemplated having them do that to one of my whatever Daytona I had at the time. Um, but it
I don't
wasn't
know if I've
cheap.
ever seen a Daytona
It
that ever had
wasn't
T-tops, so
it wasn't cheap. I don't know that up until I'd be lying. That's what I say. I don't think up until maybe in the early '90s they may have started doing that factory.
yeah, yeah.
But you know what? There may have been some older ones.
I just
T
don't
tops
remember
were a
ever
big
seeing
thing.
one. They were,
T
yeah.
tops were a big thing in the '80s for sure.
Yeah, well, you had the 280ZX came. It was one of the first ones that had the T-tops, that you could get standard.
Yeah,
And then, the Trans Am,
the Trans Ams
and
and the
I would
Camaros.
say in the Camaros, but I want to say if I had to guess, this is just me guessing, probably Smoking the Bandit's Trans Am probably was one of the first people was like,
Oh,
whoa,
I'm
that's pretty
sure.
cool.
Yeah, it's a open air without being
Yeah.
completely
Hmm.
exposed type thing. Yeah,
Yeah, it was kind of cool. Uh, I remember when my dad brought that 280 home. I was probably, I think it was like 82 or so. So I was like 7. And it was the first car that I'd ever seen that actually like talked, like door is open, headlights
yeah,
are on, and all that.
yeah.
Like, oh my God,
Right,
what the hell? You know,
right.
and,
Yeah,
And this is
Yeah.
before Nissan. I don't know if Nissan ever owned, like, if they owned Datsun before and those are the Datsun line, or they ended up buying them. I'm not sure. But it was still a
Right.
Datsun. It wasn't a Nissan. And it was like, holy cow. And so I still have a very big passion for Z cars.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the
My
first one. It's like, door is open, headlights are on. Like, what in the world?
I don't remember what model it was. It was definitely in the 80s. First one I remember that talked was a Lincoln. That
Oh yeah, okay.
my grandmother had a Lincoln that would talk, and it was mid 80s. Don't give me line on model, or I don't even know, but
Yeah.
it was a boat. I can tell you that. It was
Oh
a
yeah.
Lincoln.
Yeah, it's probably a Continental, I'd imagine.
I
Because
maybe I don't know.
who knows? Who knows? You know, I've been contemplating the next car and stuff, and I'm one of those that I'm going to try to find a cool. I want to find a cool old car, like a '70s sports car you
Mhm.
can get for like about 10 grand, and spend a little bit of money and fixing it up a little bit if I have to. But I've been looking at like an old 240 or 260Z
Mhm.
just for sentimental reasons, honestly. I've got four cars I've kind of picked out,
Uh-huh.
and that one's one. I tell you a car that I love. I just love the looks of it. The old MGB Roadster,
Mhm.
the old convertible MGs back in the '70s. Those things are awesome. We're talking like 110 horsepower,
Oh yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
100 horsepower, but they were
Mhm.
just cool as hell. Then you had like the Triumph TR6. I found a couple of those for about 5 grand that are in decent shape. I don't know if they run, but the bodies are in decent shape. And then there's a car that I came across while looking for a Triumph, and I'd never heard of it before. And have you ever heard of a car company called Reliant?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
It was a British car,
Uh-huh.
and I don't know how to say the name. It's like SCI something. It's kind of like I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like a sports car, for like a Z car in the front, but it's got like a bubble hatchback in the back. It's kind of interesting.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I'd never heard of it before. I never heard of the company Reliant before,
Mhm.
and I was like, holy cow! It was like a '72 or '73 model, and there's only a few of them, that were brought over to the states, so they're a little more expensive, even though they're not great cars, I don't think, but they're kind of cool looking. And I like cars that are just like different, different than everybody else's.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'll probably if my next car is probably going to be either I think it's going to either be an MG, or if I can find the problem with the old Datsun Z cars, man, they're expensive as hell now. Like, you want to
Yeah.
find a 280ZX that's in decent condition, it's like 30, 40 grand now. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But I can get like a 240 or 260 for like 15 maybe. You're gonna have to probably have a lot of miles on it, but
Right.
it wouldn't be a daily driver. It'd just be a fun car.
Right.
I've also thought for 40 grand, I was like, okay, for 40 grand, you can get
Right.
a Porsche 356 Speedster kit car, fully built for you.
Right. Well,
It's
they
got
wrap those around.
it's a VW Bug
Ah.
chassis, and you can get them for a little bit cheaper, for like 35 grand if you actually use the VW engine, like the old 80 horsepower
Mhm.
Bug engine. But you can find like some different one, like Subarus or maybe some like Nissan. People have just put some like modern, quote unquote, modern engines in them.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But I think the cool thing is like, if you get that kit car, not that I would, but it'd be kind of cool to have.
Yeah.
But with that VW engine, that old Bug, Beetle, whatever you want to call it, Beetle engine, it
Mhm.
sounds like the old Porsche engines, because it's that
Mhm.
old,
Right.
really crappy four banger. But those
Right.
Volkswagen engines run forever.
Right.
I've actually seen Bugs that have a million miles on them before.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I would never do it, but because I could go buy a bunch of cars for 40 grand
Yeah.
and just have
Definitely.
fun with them.
Yeah.
But I like doing that. I like looking at cars I can get for like maybe $7,000 to $10,000 and see what I could do with them. But I don't know.
Yeah. The reason I ask is that there's a reason that you can't find Pontiac Fieros, and it's because there's a lot of kits for those Fieros.
Oh yeah, yeah. There are a lot of
A
Fiero kit
lot of
cars.
kits. Yeah.
As a matter of fact,
Yeah.
I think the Fiero is used a lot for like the Shelby
hmm
kit cars. You know?
It's used a lot for a lot. I mean, that's probably the most common kit that, at least back in the day,
Yeah,
that you could find, and you don't hardly see any Fieros, and that's because either they were turned. Let's be honest about this. They
yeah.
either were turned into kit cars, or they
hmm
caught on fire.
This is true. This is true.
you know.
The Fiero. I remember when the Fiero came out. It was called the poor man's Ferrari. You know, but they looked cool as hell, man. I'm not gonna lie. The Fieros, they
I
caught
had a
your eye
buddy
when they
that had
first
one.
came out.
I had a buddy that had one, and
Yeah,
it was a very cool little car for
it
sure.
really was. Yeah,
Yeah, it was it was kind of like, I tell you what, it come out about the same time is the Z24 Cavalier. My dad bought my mom in, what was it, 85 or 86.
the
Um,
Z24
that
Cavalier.
Z24, not Z28. That's the
And
Camaro, right?
yeah, I didn't
But
know there was a Z24
yeah, a
model.
Z24 Cavalier, and holy
Interesting.
crap, dude, this thing was freaking. It was awesome. It was awesome,
Was it
and
quick?
it was a yeah, and
I
it was
bet
a
it was.
poor man's Camaro, basically. Or,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Poor
Oh
man's
yeah.
Z28. I don't know. It might even beat a stock Camaro. You might could even beat a stock Camaro with it,
Well, it's probably lighter
but yeah.
and quicker off
Oh,
the
it was
line at least.
smaller. It was smaller, and at that time, I mean, with the V6 and what they were doing with the V6s at the time, and yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I came across on Amazon Prime last week maybe Prime Video, and it's a show called Scrapyard Supercars. You ever heard of it?
Mm-mm.
It's a
No, I
British
don't think so.
show. I never heard of it. It's a British show. I was like, what the hell? So I'll watch it. And what happens is this guy brings some kind of every episode's a different car, but he brings like some kind of a supercar, right? And this guy owns a junkyard there in England somewhere. And there's two teams of four people, and each team, like there's like tracks. So like the episode that I watched, this first episode, the guy brings a Bentley SUV, like 600 horsepower SUV, and the
Wow.
track is like an off-road mud hills and water and
Mhm.
track, and he takes a lap in his Bentley, and let's say it's like 45 seconds, so that's the time to beat. And these crews have 4 days to build out of a scrapyard some kind of car that can beat him on that track, beat that time.
Mhm.
And so I was like, well, this is interesting. So I was watching it, and one team found a dune buggy frame,
Uh-oh.
and but it had no engine. It was just literally
Yeah.
just the frame.
Yeah.
And so they're going around the junkyard trying to find an engine, and they ended up finding an engine that was like I don't know, it was like a 1.8 liter, but it was don't get me lying. I don't remember what kind of car it was from, but on a dune buggy frame, you
Yeah.
don't need a whole lot to push that, right?
You don't. I've seen quite a
And
few that have V6s. It's like, oh my
yeah,
god.
that'd be scary. Honestly, that'd be scary for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
But they built this thing. They had to like retrofit, like welding things. They had to figure out how to fit the engine in there. So they're
Oh yeah.
cutting. It was nuts. And then the other team found an old reason why I started watching it, because they found like a 95 Land Rover, which I had one of those, and it ran. It wasn't running great, but they don't need to go but more than a minute, right? So they don't, as long as the engine can last a minute, they don't care how long that engine lasts, as long as it lasts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they built this because it's got 4-wheel drive and all that in the mud. It's like, okay, we need a 4-wheel drive SUV. And they said, oh, there's a Land Rover. I wonder if it starts. And they found a battery and hooked it up, and it actually rolled over. And so they ended up like cutting everything off. They cut the roof off of it. They took the doors off of it.
Wow.
They took everything. So basically, it was a skeleton with this V6 engine in it.
Yeah.
And they had to put a roll bar on it and different things. It was crazy
Yeah.
to them to find these scraps and stuff, and
Mhm.
taking seats. They took the seats out of everything, and then like found like some some Nissan that had like a racing seat in it.
Uh-huh.
They took it out of that Nissan and they put it in the Land Rover just to have, not in the Land Rover, but in the what do you call it, the Dune buggy, just to have like a racing seat in it, because the buggy was just a frame. It had no seat, had nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It was crazy. And they're finding tires, they're taking tires off of other cars, like they're all mismatched tires. It's hilarious. And both cars actually ended up beating that Bentley's time.
Wow.
And it was kind of crazy. And it's a fun show because they're just like, they're just literally at a scrapyard finding stuff and figuring out a way to beat, a $200,000 SUV, and the next one I didn't watch, but the next one he brings a Lamborghini, and I want to say it was a Diablo, I think. And so they had to build a supercar to beat it, and I didn't watch it. I didn't start the next one, but the preview was a Lamborghini, so I might have to go back and watch. It was kind of cool. It's kind of fun to watch people get weird and say, look, we don't have to build a car that we're going to drive to the grocery store. We just need it to last 45 seconds to a minute, and if it breaks, it breaks.
Right. Yeah.
It was kind
Yep.
of cool. It was kind of cool to watch that, but I never heard of that show before, but it was kind of fun. But
It's kind of like we were talking about, the quarter mile.
yeah,
A lot of those guys will build one as long as it
that's right.
gets down the strip. They don't care. It's like,
That's right. Yep.
yeah,
They had so one of the channels that I watch from the car side is called Tavarish, and you brought the McLaren,
yeah,
and he found a McLaren that was absolutely destroyed in a wreck, and bought it for like 50 grand. It's kind of scary, isn't it, that a completely totaled,
still
destroyed
brings
McLaren
50
is still
grand.
50
Yeah.
grand.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
And
what few parts are salvageable, or
right,
I'm sure worth that. Yeah.
absolutely. And he ended up putting about I don't know, about 200,000. And he had about $250,000 into it when he finally got it done, and it ended up taking it to SEMA, and it's a beautiful car, and it's $1 million car now.
Yeah.
Um, but it was so funny because I was watching an episode like when he finally got done with it, and it was his first test drive with it,
Mm.
and he took it out, and he blew the engine.
Mm.
After all, it took him like a year to get that thing done, and he
Yeah.
blew the engine, and so I don't know where that stands now. I'm sure he's
Yeah.
having to
Yeah.
fix it, but
Yeah.
that's got to be a terrible feeling when you're in a supercar and you blow the engine on the very first drive. It's
Right.
got to be, and he thinks it's the engine. I mean, something's wrong with the engine, obviously, but it may not be blown. It just might something, there's something might have been wrong with it that he can
Yeah.
fix relatively easy. Still gonna be
Right.
expensive to fix, but
Oh yeah. Yeah. No doubt.
when you're talking that stuff, I mean, there's really not an aftermarket for McLarens and Lambos and all that. You just got to get it from
Yeah.
Lambo or McLaren or Ferrari and all that.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
kind
I
of cool.
mean, you know, um, I was I forgot what I even was doing. I went for some reason. I was visiting my buddy one time. It's been quite a few years ago. It works at the local Ford place, mechanic there,
Yeah.
and I went to see him for something. I don't know if he was asking him a question or maybe I'd worked on a gun I was dropping off for him. I don't know. I
Yeah.
was doing something. And they had a brand new, and this was, like I said, this was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, but had a brand new uh, 1-ton Ford Power Stroke
Okay.
up on a lift, and there was a crate underneath it,
Uh-oh.
and yeah, engine, right?
That's
And
not good. Yeah.
I'm like, holy crap! I'm like, that's a brand new truck, and he's like, yeah, it is. He's like, it's warranty. He said, they're talking about the dealership and Ford and whatever, like
Right.
not happy. He's like not happy about it. He's like, that's a $28,000 engine, and we're talking about just a
A
Ford Power
$28,000
Stroke.
engine for a
Yeah,
Ford pickup.
yeah, we're just talking about a Ford 1-ton, Power Stroke, right? Like, you know, brand new, obviously, or whatever, but $28,000 is that's what he said anyway. It was a
Holy,
$28,000
like
engine.
it was. is it a special engine, like an upgrade engine, or is that
No,
like
it
the
was just
stock
not that
engine?
I couldn't ta no, 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 it was whatever come in their factory, right? Like, yeah.
Right, but what I'm saying is, I mean, it wasn't like it was they hadn't done any upgrades to
No,
the
no, no,
engine.
no,
It's
no,
just
no, no, no,
it
no,
was
they were
that's the
replacing
engine.
they were replacing
Holy
the engine that
cow.
came in it, yeah, 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 and I'm like,
Wow.
"Holy crap, no wonders if that's the cost of the engine, no wonder, like, that truck's $80,000,
Yeah,
probably starting price,
yeah.
new
Isn't
for
it
a
crazy these days
for
that
one ton."
pickups are 80 to I mean, there's
Yeah,
there's
and
some
I'm like,
pickups that
"That's
are
why
$100,000 and it's like, "What in the
if the
world?"
engine itself is $28,000, like,
Yeah,
obviously, I'll tell you something that's jacked up today that I was a little upset. So we were talking about for a little while trading in the Kia, right?
yeah, yeah.
And I was just curious, so I was looking at some sticker prices. There's two stickers on every vehicle on that lot, and I didn't even notice it until the sales guy I was talking to pointed it out.
Yeah,
And so I looked at the sticker price and I'm like, you know what? If I can make enough off of selling this one and apply it to this car here, this
right,
new
yeah.
one, I'm like, this wouldn't be that bad. And he's like, yeah, but there's extras. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, over here. And I'm like, what is all of this? And it was like 4,000. It added like 4 grand to the price.
What?
And I'm like, he's like,
Is it stuff
oh,
that
well,
they did or
stuff that
what?
the dealer does, and it's like some special coating
Oh,
they put on the paint and they get them and I'm
yeah.
like, so, like, not being
And you
ugly or
don't have a
anything.
choice that they've already done those
Well,
upgrades, I
if you
guess?
wanna buy that car, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. I mean,
And
what
I'm
I'm saying
like,
is it's they've already done
but
them. It's
every
not
car
like
on
they
the
haven't
lot,
done them yet. They're already
yeah,
done.
no,
Yeah, yeah.
every car on the lot had that extra sticker because I seen the extra
I wonder how
sticker.
much of that is bullshit, you
I
know?
thought it was an emissions sticker. I didn't pay any attention to it, right?
Sure,
I was
yeah.
looking at the normal sticker that, you see. So every car on the lot had that, and I'm like, not being ugly, but, when y'all take the MSRP,
Yeah.
right, and you want the MSRP, like no other business charges the
Right,
MSRP,
right.
and then you want that, and then you tack stuff on top of the MSRP, like, not being ugly, but how do you sell a single car? Like, and the answer to that is payments, right? High interest in payments.
Well, and they're hoping that you finance it through them,
Yeah,
and that's what
yeah,
they really are hoping, you know?
yeah. They can get you even without really high interest. I mean, you looking at, oh well, it doesn't matter that I'm paying $5,000 or $6,000 over sticker price because it's only going to cost me $400 a month or whatever. I'm like,
Right.
oh my god, for 7 years though, or whatever the heck it is.
Yeah.
Like,
I
that's
remember
ridiculous.
when we got my wife's, Camry, and I had gotten through Capital One, which is our credit card that we use. We got a really good it was like, like
That's a
nothing like
freaking miracle.
well, yeah,
My experience with Capital One, I've got a really bad experience with Capital One though, but
oh,
yeah,
well,
yeah,
we had I had gone through and gotten a really, like, solid, like, 1.5, percent interest on that thing,
yeah,
and
that's
so
insane for
yeah,
them. Yeah,
this is hold on a second. This is what, 2016, 2017, somewhere in there.
yeah, yeah.
And so I go down to the Toyota dealership, and she had picked out a few of them that she wanted. And so I was going down there to just kind of like, see what the best deal was and all of that.
Mhm, yeah, yeah,
And so we get in there, and I was going to trade in. I had a Pontiac G6,
mhm.
which is a fun little car, by the way.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It was quick, man. It was a
Oh yeah.
fun little car. Man, that thing would go. Anyway, so I was going to trade in. They actually gave me a really good trade in on that. Anyways, so they're like, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, what's the best deal on this one? And they said this. He says, now, are you going to be wanting to finance it in house or whatever? And I said, well, I've got outside financing already secured. I said, but I mean, if you want to take a shot at it, then sure. And they said, well, if you do it in house, we can knock off a little bit more. And I was like, no, I understand how a game works. And he says, well, what were you getting? I was like, well, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not
Right.
going to tell you what I've got. If you can beat it, then great. If not, then I know what I've got already, and we'll just go ahead and do the deal.
Yeah.
And, and so he goes back and takes all my info and all that, and comes back about 10 minutes later, and it was like below what I was going to get from Capital One, which
Mm,
really surprised me. And I
yeah,
was like, okay, let's do it. So we actually got a little bit more off of it because they were going to get, although it wasn't a lot, they were going to get that, 1.5% interest, for 5 years or whatever it is,
right, right.
and so there's that's the whole thing is, there are some people that just, it sounds bad, but they, whether credit or whatever, they don't have an option. They're gonna get bent over on the interest
That's
rate.
true.
It is
Yeah,
what it is. But typically, if you go in, and this is something that I told my daughter, and when she bought her first car, she bought herself a Nissan Rogue, brand new Nissan Rogue, a couple years ago. And it was her first car that she ever bought on her own, and all that.
yeah,
And so I had her go through her bank and then someone else, something else online, and just see what the best rate she could get.
right.
And then she was at the dealership, and I said, then have them, they're going to ask you, but don't tell them what you've got already, but just, they're going to
Mhm.
ask you, blah, 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 and let them run the rate and see what happens. So it was really weird. She calls me and she goes, I don't know if they're like messing with me or not, because she's, at the time she's 23, and she was gonna get like a 6% rate or something like that, because it's what it is. And so she had the dealership run it, and she called and she says, I don't know if they're messing with me or not. And I was like, why? She goes, well, the best rate I could get was like, 6 or whatever. I was like, yeah, that's about right for a 23-year-old with no credit.
Yeah,
And I said, that's pretty good. And she goes, yeah, they came back and said that, like, every now and then, like when they just roll someone's credit, like Nissan, or I don't know if it's the dealership or Nissan in general, like every now and then will just like give a deal. And she just happened to be one. They came to her for like three and
yeah.
a half percent.
Oh wow.
And she was like, should I take it? Is this a scam? And I was like, no, I mean, just make sure, and her fiance, her current, whatever, he was boyfriend at the time, but he was there and he'd bought a couple of vehicles before, and he was making sure he read everything. She's like, it's like half of what everyone else was. And I was like, I mean, they want that 3%. Like, you know,
There's
they're gonna, that's where they make their money, is the financing of the car.
yeah, yeah. So I norm for years now, I go through one of two credit unions because
Yeah,
you
sure.
just can't beat it.
Yeah,
But
credit unions are great.
one of the cool things that these credit unions will do is between Thanksgiving and Christmas,
Hmm.
they've got a Christmas tree, a pretty big Christmas tree in the lobby.
Yeah.
And of course it's got all kinds of ornaments on it, but it's got these Christmas balls that you unscrew.
Okay.
And if you come in looking to get a car loan, right?
Yeah.
You sit down, they run your credit, they figure out your rate, right?
Yeah.
And then you're able to go get a ball off the Christmas
Oh,
tree and
okay.
unscrew it, and it'll tell you how many more percent
You get off or
you
whatever.
can get off. And it's
Oh,
like
wow, that's
in
pretty
point.
cool.
So anywhere from 0.1 all the way up to 1% off,
Yeah. I mean, that's
right?
big.
So you could get like a 2.5, and then you could go get it and end up with a 1.5%,
Yeah.
or you may
Yeah.
end up with a half, and you may end up with 1%, or whatever it might be. Um, but that's pretty cool. But yeah, one of the things that's crazy is I can remember, well, two things actually. I can remember when like 3 years was the standard for a car note.
Oh,
Like
yeah,
that was it.
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
then somewhere along the line it went to 5 became standard.
Yep.
And now 6 is pretty much standard, and I'm even seeing 7 and 8. Like, my brother has a Dodge pickup,
Yeah.
and it's on a freaking 8-year note. Like,
Wow.
it's insane. Like, an
Well,
8-year note, but it's a $70,000 truck or something.
yeah,
I mean,
and I
you
think
can
that's probably
literally
where it came
you can buy a
into is,
house in this part of the country. You can buy a house for that. I kid you not. My I call them neighbors across the street. I think I've talked about this before on probably other shows, but they've got 9 acres. They've got a house with it's 3 bedroom, 2 bath, and then they've got a 2-car garage with a 1 bedroom, 1 bath apartment above it. and
Yeah.
tons of storage in the bottom part.
Sure.
Um, and it's 72 grand.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
his truck costs more than that
That's
basically two
crazy.
houses and land and 9
That's
acres.
crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
That's
Like how in the
nuts.
world? But what I was going to say, where a lot of people get messed up is, and this I always told my kids this, like, do not. One of the quickest ways to screw your credit to really get in a bind and get in trouble is to pay too much for a car.
Yeah.
Because once you pay too much for a car, you're screwed.
Yep.
Because
You're in it for years.
if you pay too much out of the gate, right? You're compounding interest on
Yep.
the more money you've already paid. You
Yep.
will never get topside on what you owe. Therefore, when you trade in,
You're
odds are
losing money.
they're gonna tack money onto the note,
Yep.
which means you're even more upside down than the next thing you get.
Yep.
And it's the cycle that like you never get out of. And honestly, that's why a lot of people I think they get upside down and like they don't want a $60,000, $70,000 ride,
Yep.
but in order to get trade in to get out of right what they've got,
Yep.
they've got to do that. And it's like over time the payments aren't that much more a month.
Right.
It's over time is when they get screwed. But then they don't realize that if I'm upside down going into this, I'm I'm always going to be upside down on this,
Always.
and I hate that. Like I can't stand it. And I've either gotten really good, and I'm this way. I'm this way on everything I do. I'm a cheap bastard, so you know I'm always looking for the deal. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like whether
Mhm.
I need it or not. Who would think I'd ever have a Kia? Um, so it's all about
But
the
you weren't
deal.
looking for it. It just kind of fell into
No,
you, you
not at
know?
all. But it's always about the deal for me, right?
Yeah.
Like
Sure.
like I'll make an exception. I may not be looking for that and may not want that, but good Lord, if it's a deal, it's a deal.
Yeah.
And that's the way I've been for the longest time. Like if I'm gonna whether I'm gonna buy it outright, pay cash, and for the long time the 3 or 4 Mustangs my wife drove, those were all cash and carries.
Yep. Yep.
My youngest daughter, um, when she bought her first car. Her no, it wasn't her second. Well, no, her first car we did a little bit of a split. She got so much, and then we put some with it. Her
Sure.
second car, she got. I think you remember that she got a Toyota Corolla.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but she saved the money and
She
paid
got that when
cash.
she got out of school, didn't she?
I think she got that.
Right when she started working for Bluebell originally?
I think so. I think when she
I think
started
so.
to go to work for Bluebell or something
Yeah.
like that,
Yeah.
she
I
did
remember
something
that.
like that. But
Does she still have it?
no, no, no.
No.
She's traded that off and everything. Um, but yeah, I mean, she saved up money and she was like, I want to go car shopping. And I'm like, all right, this thing.
Yeah.
She's like, she had like I don't remember. She had like 12 or 14,000 or something in the
That's a
bank. And
great
so
down payment. Then
we
again, you
went
don't want to spend all
around.
that on a down payment either. If you can only spend eight,
She
then
paid cash for that. It was like 2 years old,
she bought the whole
and
thing. Okay.
it was cash and carry. Man, we went in
Okay.
and looked at several. And of course, my buddy obviously it was used, but um, my buddy actually worked at the car dealership. It was actually at a Nissan dealership, but she looked at some Nissans. We looked at several things and drove that one. And I pretty much knew by looking at it and everything. I'm like, with the interior, with a lot of the other things, I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think she may go for this one. And I kind of told him that on the sly too.
And I tell you
Um,
what, that old Toyota Corolla four banger, man, that Toyota four banger will run
yeah,
literally
forever,
forever, like
forever.
literally
Yeah,
forever.
yeah. There's still, early 80, late 70, early
Oh
80 model
yeah,
Corollas on the road right
100%.
now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Probably 400,000 miles on them,
Oh,
still going.
easily. Yeah.
And anyway, so yeah, I played Sly a little bit. He didn't know
Sure.
she was gonna pay cash.
Yeah.
And so was able to work it down. And yeah, he threw a deal out there, and I got, all right, we'll take it. They go, well, okay, let's set up the financing. And I'm like, no, 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 we're gonna go get you a check.
Yeah.
And he
It's
gave
like
me a look like
it's like what's your cash price, buddy?
he gave me a look like, you bastard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
oh, you bastard. And
Yeah.
like he did said it now. It's like we're gonna go get a check. So
Yeah.
the
I
bank
re
was the bank was right around the corner, so we just ran around the bank. She got a cashier's check, so Yeah,
that's one of the biggest things that I told
uh,
my daughter when she called me and told me she was going to go, she wanted to buy a car and all that. And I said, look, here's the thing. I said, I'll tell you something that I was always taught, and it's the best thing you could ever keep in the back of your mind is no matter how bad you want that car, you have to be willing to walk away.
you got to be willing
You
to walk
have to
away.
be willing to
Yeah,
walk away and lose it. Not
yeah,
just walk away as a joke, but actually walk away and lose that car because you'll find something down the road.
yep,
And
yeah,
when I was buying my wife's Camry,
yeah.
I was down there, like I said, he was going through all of this. And before we got to the point where we were talking financing and all of that,
Mhm.
um, we were negotiating the price. And this one has like it's a special edition, had like the nice
Oh yeah,
seats, and
oh yeah,
it's a nice. Yeah, I think you've been in it before.
yeah. It's the one you
It's
got
a
now,
nice,
right?
yeah, it's a nice,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah, yeah.
really, really,
It's the
really nice,
premium. Yeah,
yeah,
it's the
it's a
premium
really
package.
nice,
Yeah,
really, really nice Camry.
yeah,
But I was just trying to, part of me is I enjoy the game, right? So
yeah, yeah,
I'm, I was probably willing to pay what the last offer was,
yeah.
and but I was like, yeah, I can go down the road and find Camrys all over the place, and
Yep,
this, that, and
that's
the
true.
other. And
Yep.
he was like, I don't think I can do it. And I said, I tell you what, man. And I took out a business card and I wrote my cell number down on it.
Uh,
And I was like, I live 45 minutes from here. I'm out of here. And I said, I'm going to give you about 15 minutes because once I get 15 minutes away, I'm not coming back. I said, so you figure out who you need to talk to. I'm heading home. And if you want this deal, then here's the number,
uh-huh.
blah, 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 blah. And he was like, and I don't think he thought that I was actually leaving. So I went out, literally got out
Yeah,
in my
right.
car, and I took off. And
Uh,
I was like literally heading back home. Like I wasn't just driving around, waiting for him to call. I was actually, fuck this,
yeah,
and
screw it.
I'm
Yeah,
out. So I was
yeah,
heading home, and I got about 10 minutes away in a little town, and my cell phone rings, and
right,
he's
right.
like, "Mr. Miller," and I was like, "Yep." He goes, "This is so and so down at Toyota." I was like, "Hey, how you doing?" He goes, "Yeah, we can do that." I was like, "All right." He says, "Where are you?" I said, "Oh, about 10, 15 minutes away." And I said, "You got close there, man."
Yeah,
And I said, "I'll turn around." And I said, "I have your word on that because I don't want to turn around and I get there and then you start adding different things." I'm like, "This is the price." He goes, "This is the price." I said, "Okay." So I turned
yeah,
around and it all worked out just fine.
yeah,
But
yeah,
that's
yeah,
the biggest thing I told my daughter is don't ever show that you really love that car.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, unless you're willing to, you got to show that you're willing to walk away and lose it. And
Well, the car, if you're gonna trade
working
one
with
in,
dealerships now, if you're talking about like a private sale, I mean that's a whole different issue. But with a dealership,
even
you got to
then,
play
not
the
so
game.
much. Yeah, you don't
Yeah.
want to show you cars either
No,
way,
no, no.
but that's just the art of negotiation. But
Hmm.
but on the trade-in side, you know, um, you gotta love the thing, right? Like, don't go in. Oh, I
Hmm.
gotta get out of this piece of junk. Don't
Right.
ever do
Oh,
that.
you got to love the car that you're in.
And I'll tell you, I learned my lesson on that. I told you I had that Nissan hardbody 4x4.
Yeah.
And when I got first new vehicle I'd ever bought was my '98 F-150,
Yeah.
and um, I did not go to the Ford dealership uh, in in town where I worked, but I went to a bunch of other Ford dealerships looking at F-150s, and I didn't want anything. I didn't want anything fancy.
Yeah.
Um, you know, really didn't. It was more work truck, that sort of thing. Anyway, wanted manual transmission. V6 was fine. I did want an extended cab. Didn't care if it was long bed, short bed.
Sure.
Really
Yeah.
didn't. Trim package. I could care less on any of that.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I went to dealerships all around because I'm like, I can go over there on lunch or whatever at any time. I can go here in
Right.
town. So I'm going to go shop these other places. And man, I quickly learned my lesson because they were crapping all over my little Nissan pickup. And it's like that thing was jacked up. That thing had roll bars and KC lights. It had,
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't the prettiest thing in the world, but it's like, come on, like,
Right. This isn't
it
stock.
had a winch. You couldn't tell me for a second that if they put that out on a little lot, they would not sell that pickup.
Sure.
They would
Yeah.
find
Especially
somebody.
especially in East Texas, you know.
Yeah, somebody looking for a hunting buggy. They might
Yeah.
not get somebody that gets it for a daily driver like I was
Yeah.
doing with it pretty much, but you can't tell me for a hunting buggy or anything else. So
Right.
there was no way I was going upside down on that. Like no way I was going upside down on
Right.
that. And it took a couple of dealerships going around to a couple to finally figure out how to play that game of really talking up what you got, right? And not letting them crap on it, you know. Um, and I went into the dealership in town and went out there and I didn't even mention a trade. Did not even mention a trade. And was looking at one they had out there on the lot. Salesman come out and I'm like, yeah, I said, I think that'll do. I think that this one work. And he's like, oh yeah, it's a good one. He said, this one come in. He says, pretty good deal on that one. He said, this was a special order. I've got this thing about buying vehicles from dead people, apparently. Um,
It's kind of creepy.
we'll get into that story maybe some other time
All
on some
right.
other podcast. But yeah, we'll talk about the I see dead people vehicles thing.
Oh Lord.
But anyway, this was one that had been special ordered. The guy passed away before it came in, and the family did not want it. Did not said
Oh,
just
okay.
don't worry about it.
Okay.
Like we've
So the,
written it
the the
off,
guy
whatever.
never actually drove the thing, so that's okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It had just come in and it had that 18 or 16 miles. I don't even remember something like that. I mean, it's backed off the truck basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and anyway, the guy had special ordered it the way it is. It had no carpet, which I was okay with. It had the rubber, stuff. Um, and it had um, the two tone paint, um, maroon over tan, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Two tone paint.
Is this the one you have now?
No, 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 no,
Oh,
no,
okay.
no, no, no.
Because your one you have now is kind of maroonish too, if I
It is.
remember right,
It's
isn't it?
it's really the same exact color. Yeah,
Oh,
which is
okay.
which
Okay.
is crazy that happened. But yeah. Anyway, so this was a 98. The one I got now is '06. Um, but anyway, I was like, oh yeah, and he's like, yeah. He said that's that's why it's a pretty good deal. I'm like, all right, well let's go talk about it, and or well no, I said let me go drive it. Anyway, I drove it, come back, and I said, "Yeah, let's talk about it." And so anyway, we talked about it, and it was a pretty good deal. It's one of them things where without any money coming off on a trade, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I wasn't gonna be upside down. Like I knew secured financing wouldn't be a problem.
Right. Yeah.
I'd be able to get out from under it if I had to, and that's a very important thing
Oh yeah.
to when it comes to a vehicle. You never know when you'll lose your job or
Yep.
something will happen, and you owe 25,000 on a car. I mean,
Yep.
being able to sell that for 22,000 ain't gonna work when you ain't got a
Right.
job. You got to at least get 25,000 for it.
Right.
Somebody that'll take over payments or whatever. Anyway, so and a bank's got to be able to finance it. That's the other
This is
thing you got to
true.
think of.
This is
It's
true.
not that that person's not willing to buy it, but if their bank's not willing to go to 22 on loan value.
Right.
But anyway, so he got it kind of squared away, and I was like, "Oh, by the way, I got a trade."
Yeah. He's like, oh.
And he's like, "Oh, well,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
and he's like, let me go see if I can find my trade." And he was gone forever. His
Yeah.
guy that takes in the trades. And anyway, guy come out, and the trade guy. It was funny because the trade guy knew that he knew that I knew that I had played the dude.
Sure. Sure.
He was like he the way he talked to me and with the look he gave me was like, well played, well played.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I
and
can't say this publicly, but well done, sir.
yeah,
Yeah.
so we went out and was looking at it, walking around it, and they started that same bullshit. Quite
Yeah.
frankly, that like the other deal. I'm like, look. I said, same thing I told you here. Like, as well as I do, you take this back. The detail guys go over it right now. I said, you
Yep.
park it out front. I guarantee you it won't last till the end of the week.
Right.
I said,
Yep.
there's no way that if you give me what I say you should give me for this, what I'm wanting for this on trade, there's no way you don't get that money back and then
Right.
some, and then some. And I was bullish about it, bullish. Like
Did the
everything
trade guy agree with you?
they
He give
did,
you a bid?
they
Nice.
did. The trade guy said, yeah, let's yeah, we'll do it, we'll do it. And so anyway, I couldn't do it. It was close to the end of the day, and I had to like come back the next day or whatever. But um, yeah, it broke my heart getting rid of that one Nissan. That was a fun little pickup,
Yeah,
um, but I needed more room than a single cab Nissan hard body, and
yeah,
needed something a little more comfortable ride and everything else. My days of four wheel drive. That's when my days of four wheel drive sort of ended, was
yeah.
with that. Um, but yeah, you gotta, like you were talking about earlier. You gotta play that game. You got to learn
Yeah.
to play that game, because if you ever let them get you,
That's
because
their job is
you
to get
know,
you. They're not, that's their job. Their job is
like
to
they
maximize what
can,
they can
and
do.
let's be honest, like they can't lose money or break even on everything they sell,
Right, right.
right? They can't keep the doors open that way. We know that. Um, but especially if you ever work for a dealership, and I've worked for several, maybe what, two or three.
Yeah.
Um, if you've ever worked for a dealership, you know the kind of markup they got.
Especially in used cars,
You
for
know
sure.
that,
You
and
know,
they're getting paid, even if, and a lot of people don't realize this, they're getting paid um, by GM, by Ford,
yep,
just for selling the car, even if they don't make any money off
yep,
of it.
yep.
GM and Ford still gives them a bonus.
Oh yeah, yep,
They'll still give them anywhere from like 1,000 to five, depending on the car,
yeah,
or truck, anywhere from like 1,000. This was back in my day, 1,000 to $5,000
yeah.
just for selling it. Like they
Hmm.
sold it at cost, at their dealer cost.
And they knew
They're
they were going to
still
make a couple
they're
grand on it.
they're
Yeah,
still making 1,000 to $5,000. So
yeah.
never let them play you and get upside down. It's just not worth it.
The most fun that I've had at a dealership, and it was the quickest transaction I've ever had. So this is like in 2009, 2010. And my wife had been driving. We bought by the way, I don't buy new cars anymore. I buy them to be a year old,
Oh
so
yeah,
they're,
yeah,
I'll never buy a brand new car again. I always buy them that's about maybe a year old. They
yeah.
still got very little mileage and it's still good, but it's a third of the price.
Yep. Same
Anyways,
here.
so at this point, my wife been driving a 99 Lincoln Navigator, and it was her favorite, still is to this day, her favorite car she's ever had. And it was a beautiful car. It was top line leathers. It was just beautiful. But where I live now, like when we bought that, we were living in San Antonio, and it
Right.
was two-wheel drive. Here in the mountains of Arkansas, and you know the story of where I live,
Yeah.
I need four-wheel drive.
Yeah.
And so we were looking, and the thing was had it had 200,000 miles. It was a 10-year-old car.
Hmm. Hmm.
Great, but my wife, I'll say this, my wife is immaculate with her cars. Like this thing was beautiful. Like it was a 10-year-old car, 2,000
I
200,000
believe it.
miles, but it was
What
beautiful.
model was it?
It was a 99 Lincoln Navigator.
See, my '98 Ford, my '98 F-150,
Yeah.
it had 180,000 on it when I
Yeah.
sold it, and probably similar engine, similar frame, I'm
Probably.
sure.
Yeah. This was
Um,
built like on an Explorer frame,
yeah,
so it's
yeah.
probably very similar to the
Um,
F-150 frame.
but and the kid I sold it to, I mean, he put well over 200. He had to have put well over 200,000 miles on it.
Oh yeah.
It's still on the road now.
Oh, I guarantee
Um,
it. And I
and
bet you that
so,
Navigator is
but
probably
yeah,
still on.
yeah.
Well, depending on who bought it,
Well, this
but
is true. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Got to take
yeah,
care of it.
you got to take care of it. She takes care of her cars, man. It's just everything she does. It's immaculate. So I
Or you
mean,
got to be selective with taking care of it. Like,
true,
a lot
true.
of people dog on me. I'm not the best to wash cars and crap like that,
Yeah,
but mechanically, I'm gonna take care of it.
mechanically,
Like,
absolutely.
you know,
So we decided that we were gonna get a four-wheel drive, and so we went down to the Dodge dealership, and the Durangos were the new Durangos, and all. Back then they were the new Durangos. Were out, the new style Durango and all
was that when you got
that.
the white one?
Yeah, and so it had just come off the truck, and it was a demo, like a dealer demo, so it had, like, not a lot of miles on it. It was like a year-old car, and it was priced really well. And leather seats, heated seats, sunroof, blah blah blah, navigation, all that stuff. It was, awesome, awesome vehicle. that you had the pleasure of working on, by the way. But anyways, so um, so this is it's we're like, okay, I said I think this is the one. And a kid that used to work for me, he was my assistant pro at the shop there for a couple years. He actually got out of the golf business and went to go work selling cars at the Dodge dealership. And so I pulled up and he walks over like, hey, what's going on? Hey, what's going on? And I said, he said, what can I do for you? I said, I want you to sell me that Durango right there. And he was like, what? And I was like, I want you to sell me that Durango. I said, like I said, it literally just kind of came off the vehicle. Like we haven't like washed it and all that. I said, I'll give you time to wash it and detail it, but I want you to give me your best sell. And he was like, okay. And it was kind of funny because the kid used to work for me and all that. And so, he gave me a good deal. Uh, I would have taken the deal, but I said, bro, here's the thing. And I said, I'm going to trade in the Navigator. He goes, wow, she's going to give the Navigator? I said, yeah, she really doesn't want to, but we do need four-wheel drive where we live now. And it's what it is. And he's like, okay. And I said, I tell you what. And I said, let's just cut the chase and let's stop the negotiations and here's what I'm willing to do. And I said, I want it for X amount of dollars and I want X amount of dollars for this trade in. If you can walk into your boss's office and tell him this is the deal and he accepts it, then I'll buy it right here. I'll cut you a check right here. And he was like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. And I was like, well, okay. I said, I'm just telling you, like, you have not even put that in your inventory yet. And I'm getting ready to buy a truck that literally got pulled off the truck an hour ago.
Uh-huh.
And I said, that'll be the quickest sale you've ever had. I'll write you a check right here. And I said, but I want you to go back and tell him I want the truck for this and I want this amount for the trade-in.
Yep.
He was like, whew. And I said, here's the thing. I'm okay with you saying no because there's 7 other dealerships in this town.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, okay. And I said, I'm going to walk across the street to the gas station, get me a soda, and I'll be back in a few minutes. He's like, okay. I come back and I'm walking across the street from the Exxon to the car dealership, and he meets me out front. He's like, are you serious? I'm like, what do you mean, am I serious? He's like, are you serious? And I was like, yeah. And he said, okay. And I was like, all right. I said, now here's what I want from you now. Now that I've got him to agree to it, he's like, okay. And I said, I don't need new tires, but I want newer than those.
Right.
And he goes, yeah, we got some, we can pull off. I was like, yeah, I don't need new tires. And I said, and I want this thing vacuum cleaned and detailed. And I'll be back, I'll be back at like 5 o'clock tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, yeah, we can do that. And so,
Yeah.
we did it. But it was one of those things where I think that was probably the easiest I've ever done. I just walked in there and I said, look, like, here's what I'll pay for this. And here's what I want for a trade in. And if you're willing to take that, then you have a deal. I'll write you a check right now. If the answer is no, then there's no more negotiations. I'll walk away and I'll go find a vehicle somewhere else. And I said, Andy,
Yeah.
I said, you know me. You've known me for a couple of years. Like, I don't like bartering. I don't like haggling. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I want to do. And I'll walk away.
Yeah.
It depends on if you want to make this commission or not,
Yeah. Yeah.
And luckily, I know the owner of the dealership, so I knew he was going to say yes. I was like, I didn't call him ahead of time, but if I would have walked in and said, "Hey, Mitch, what's up?" He was like, "Hey, what's up?" And I said, "Okay, I'm trying to make the deal at Durant." He would have done it, but I wanted to let Andy know that, like, I'm not messing around. Don't try to play your freaking your salesman games. Here's what it is, and here's what I'll do. And if you can make this work, and he did. He came 10 minutes later, like, it's done. I was like, okay.
Right. Yeah.
So it was kind of a cool thing. Like I said, that car literally had not. I mean, they probably had to put it on their books before they could sell it to me. It literally was just they pulled it off the truck and was sitting out in the parking lot.
Right. Right.
And I wasn't looking for that. I was just went up there to the dealership to see what they had, and I was like, oh, that's a good looking Durango right there.
All right. Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, we had that until 2017, 2018 or so, and we had driven it all over the country because the good thing about that Durango is it had that V8 and it had that Hemi in there, and that thing would run. But at that time when my daughter was playing like like they won a national championship in softball and travel ball, and we were traveling from Florida to California. Like, so we had to have a vehicle that was 4-wheel drive, but also it was like you could drive it.
Yeah.
We put
Right.
a ton of miles on that thing,
Yeah.
a ton of miles over
Yeah.
the years, and we ended up like giving it to one of her friends for like $1,000 or something just to have, because she had had a bad breakup, and like the car that she was driving like was actually under her boyfriend's name, and he
Yeah.
was being a
Right.
prick about it. And I was like,
Yeah.
look, here,
Yeah.
we're getting ready to
That's
get a new vehicle anyway. Like that's when my wife wanted the Camry.
yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
we already actually had the Camry. We had
That's
the Camry, and that was actually what I was driving to work it and all that. And I still had
right.
I had the Hummer and all of that, but I wasn't driving the Hummer at the time because the gas was so freaking expensive.
Right.
But yeah, so it was one of those things that was the easiest one for me. It literally took 10 minutes, to make a deal. So that doesn't happen very often. It was fun.
Yeah. When I sold the '98, it was kind of the same way. That kid. It's the son of a guy that I actually went to school with.
Oh, okay.
And a friend of my son,
Oh, okay. There you
or
go.
acquaintance or whatever. But came down. I'd listed my '98 for sale, and you know had pretty much decided I wasn't going to take. I'd keep it for less than $2,000.
Sure.
And and they pull up. This him and his dad, pull up.
Did you know they
And
were coming to look at the car? Or?
didn't know. I didn't know
Okay. Okay.
what they were coming. If they coming to see my son, or maybe his
Right.
dad was coming to ask me something. I mean, I do see him around occasionally or whatever.
But they hadn't
You
called
know,
and said, "Hey, we're going to come look at your
no,
truck or anything."
no,
Gotcha.
I listed it on Facebook. And it's been a couple days or something like that. And maybe that's not why. Maybe my son told them. I don't know. But they pulled up. They said, "Oh, we wanted to look at the truck." And I'm like, "Okay." And he's like, "Yeah, I brought my dad, so he could look it over." I said, "Hey, here it is. Here's the keys. Drive it." I said, "Crank it up.
And that's
Seriously.
something that
The air
happens probably in
conditioner
the
is awesome."
South more than anywhere else. I don't think that happens up in the North. Is people come over and say, "Hey, man, here are the keys. Go drive it around."
Yeah,
I
right.
trust you'll come back.
Yeah, yeah. I said, "Yeah." I said, "Run it around." I mean, a lot of dirt roads and crap around here. It ain't like
Yeah.
there's massive traffic. But anyway, Um, I'm like, "Drive it." I said, "Let your dad drive it." I said, I said, "Definitely crank it up, turn on the AC." I said, "You ain't gonna get any colder air conditioning.
Yeah.
You'll literally driving down the highway, that thing." And I'm talking about 90+ degree weather in
Yeah.
Texas, and of course the windows were tinted on it, but there would be ice on the vents. They would
Oh,
literally
wow.
create ice on the vents in
That's
like 90
crazy.
degree weather. Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is insane. I don't know that I've ever experienced an air conditioner colder than that one. It was crazy. I'm like, check the air conditioner, it blows, this, that, and the other. Anyway, showed him a few little things. I forgot what, but there was a few little quirky things with it. And also told him, I'm like, look, now these things were really, really bad for the slave cylinder to go bad. I said, but this one's got 180,000 miles, and I ain't never touched the
Yeah.
transmission or the clutch ever.
Yeah.
I said, so you might be looking at $100 or whatever it is, because I knew his dad would work on crap
Yeah.
himself. So
Yeah.
I'm like, you might be looking at 80 or $100, to replace that slave
Hmm.
cylinder eventually, just so you know,
Yeah.
you know. All right, yeah, yeah, yeah. So anyway, they drove it. And they come back, and he goes, well, Mr. Dover, I want it. But I don't have all the money. And if I give you 1,500, will you hold it for a couple weeks? And I said, boy, I said, I'll tell you what. I said, let me go in
Once
the
again,
house.
I have a feeling I know where this is going. Once
Yeah.
again, this probably only
I
happens
said,
in the South.
yeah, I said, let me tell you what. I said, let me go in the house and get the title transfer papers.
Yeah.
I said, you give me $1,500 and you drive it home and we're done.
Yeah.
I said, if you want it, you know,
Yeah.
I will sell it to you for 1,500
Right.
bucks, and you take that 500 in a couple of weeks, and you put tires on it, or you whatever, you know, you spend that 500 on the truck, put your new stereo in it, whatever. Like you spend the money, on something else. And anyway, and I was dead set I wasn't going to take less than $2,000, but
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? how often do you get
You
it?
know who it's going to. You know he's gonna
I'm
love
not
it. You
gonna
know.
go. Yeah, I knew who it was going to. I knew him. Like I said, him and his dad.
Hmm.
You know, um, it one of the things where $500 wasn't gonna make at the end of
Right.
the day, it wasn't gonna make me a bit of damn difference. But
Right.
him, it would. A young kid. I mean,
Absolutely.
take him a month to make $500.
Absolutely.
Just it's like just yeah, and I'm done with it.
Exactly.
I don't have to worry about somebody owing me money. Because
Yep.
what would have happened? This was my thought with something like that too. What if that would have been the case, right?
Hmm.
And then he wouldn't been able to come up with the 500,
Right.
and it is
What are
set there for all
what are you
that
gonna do?
time.
Take
And
yeah,
then what are
exactly.
we going to do? Am I going to end up taking 1,500 for it anyway?
Right.
Or what happens if he comes back and that doesn't work? And you know, it's just yeah, it wasn't worth it. Wasn't
Yeah.
just yeah, we're done.
It was funny. So this is not a car story, but it's kind of a fun story. One of my favorite stories. So for those out there who don't know, I'm a golf pro by trade. And this is probably 20 something years ago. This 21, 22 years ago. The course I was at before this one. I was the head pro there. And we had some new putters come in. And this kid who was always there, and I wish when I left the club, I wish would have kept in touch because I think the kid had potential. He could have played in college or something, and I didn't keep in touch, and that's my fault. But anyways, this kid's like 12 or 13 at the time, so he wasn't old enough. But I always told him, look, if I'm still here when you're 16, like if you want a job here, like you're here. And so he would do some stuff like for a free range ball, like he could pick up some balls or do something around the shop for me, just to get free range balls all the time. So he's a good kid. He's always there like almost every day after school. And during the summertime, like his dad would just drop him off at the club and then pick him up when he came home from work. He'd just be out there playing golf all day. He's a great kid. Anyway, he comes in one day and he wants one of the new putters. The new putter's like 150 bucks. And he's like, Mr. Trey, he's like, can I talk to you? And he was acting different, like he was acting all nervous, and you could tell that he'd probably been thinking about this for a week or so, and trying to figure out what he was going to say. And I was like, "What you got?" And he was trying to be all like, grown up, professional. Like he's like, "I'd like to talk to you about making a deal." I was like, "Okay, sure. What you got?" He's like, "I'd like one of the new XYZ putters, whatever the putters they were. I don't remember what it was, probably Odyssey or something. Who knows?" But it's like $150 putter, and I was like, "Okay." And he's like, I've got this putter that I found in the garage, and I asked my dad if I could trade it in. I was like, okay. And he's like, so I like to trade it in and then like maybe set up a payment plan or something like that. And all this, that, and the other. I was like, sure, we can talk about that. I said, what kind of putter do you have? And so it's this old, 70s putter, it was not banged up, it was just old. And I'm looking at it and I said, is your dad home? This is like a Saturday or Sunday. He's like, is your dad at home? And he's like, yes, sir. And I said, all right, go into my office, use the phone, call him, and ask him to come up here. He goes, is everything okay? And I was like, no, yeah, everything's fine. Just ask him to come up here and all that. And he was like, okay. And so his dad gets there. I knew his dad real was. His dad was a member, and so his dad came up. He's like, what's going on? I was like, well, I say he comes in and he's wanting to trade in. He wants a putter and wanted to trade in and all that. And he goes, yeah, you've been talking about it for a while. And I told him, hey, just go up there, shake his hand, look him in the eye, and you know, be adult about it and work something out. And I said, no, no, he was fine. He was very, great. And I said, the problem is he's got this trade-in putter. He goes, yeah. And I said, have you seen this putter before? And he goes, "Yeah, it's been in my garage forever. I think I got it from a buddy of mine years ago. I never really did use it. It's a ping putter." And I was like, "Well, here's the problem." And he goes, "What's that?" And I said, "This is the original ping answer putter that Karsten sold out of his trunk before he started ping." I said, "You see where it says Karsten Golf on it?" He's like, "Yeah." And I said, "You see where it says blah 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 model number and all that?" And I was like, he goes, "Yeah." And I said, now this is like 2001, 2000. This is 2002, right? And I said, this is $1,000 putter. He's like, what? And I was like, this is $1,000 putter. And I said, now I'll gladly take this in on a trade and give him that putter. And I said, but I also want to not screw you guys. I figured neither one of you knew what you had here. And he goes, are you serious? And I'm like, this is $1,000 putter. And I said, where'd you get it? And he said, a buddy gave it to me like a long time ago. I said, do you know where he got it? He goes, I don't know. I was like, well, he didn't know what he had either. And I started pulling out uh, like magazines where they had pictures of it. I was
Yeah,
like,
I
oh my
wouldn't.
God.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
have a clue either. Yeah, yeah.
Right, right. And he's like, oh my God. I was like, yeah, this is $1,000. At the time, this is 20 years, some years ago. It's thousand. That's probably double that now. I said, this is $1,000 putter. And I said, I tell you what. And I said, keep the putter. I'm going to give you this putter. And he's like, really? And I said, I shouldn't say I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to let you take it home and start using it now. And he's like, now, you're not 16, so I can't pay you. I said, but your dad can sign a waiver. And he says, what do I need to do? And I said, this is in like early June, so school had just gotten out, right?
Mhm.
I said, every night, Monday through Friday, I want you to come up here and you're going to pick up the range balls on the driving range
Mhm.
until I'm going to keep a running tally of how long you're out here. And until, like, if I was going to pay you a minimum wage, you'll do this until I'll keep a tally of how many hours you worked until that $150 is worked off. And so the very next day, I said, what time do I need to be here? I said, be here at like 4 o'clock. He's like, okay. And usually he'd come out at like 2 o'clock and play 9 holes or something, before he worked and all that.
Right.
Well, the next day he shows up at like 3 o'clock and he's like, can I start now? I was like, well, no, we can't really start now because there's still people hitting on the range. And I said, but I tell you what, I said, there's about 4 or 5 golf carts out back. Why don't you go take a hose to them and wash them off? Like, okay. And I'll probably get in trouble if I actually for child labor laws, but
Mhm.
but his dad did sign a
Yeah.
waiver saying that
Right.
he could do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he worked probably, I don't know, the whole summer basically until school started again.
Mhm.
Maybe a little bit before school started again, but he'd worked it off. And I was like, that kid right there, like he showed up every day. Like he was willing to work. Even days he went like on weekends. He like, hey, you need anything done? Nah, man, you have a weekend. Blah blah blah. And he did it. But yeah, his dad, he was going to trade in $1,000 putter. And there's a part of me that sat there and said, shit, like I could have taken that and, put that on
Right.
eBay or something, or
Yeah.
whatever.
No
But I was like,
kidding, man.
like they don't have a clue what they have, and I'm not going to take advantage of them. They're friends of mine and all
Yeah.
that. But I was like, you
Yeah.
don't know what you have. This is $1,000 putter. You want to trade in on a
So
$150 putter?
I don't mind that with somebody I don't know.
Oh no 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 no
You
no!
know what I
If
mean?
they weren't
But if
members and I
it's
didn't
but
know
if
this
somebody
kid,
I know,
oh,
like I can't, you know,
100%. If I don't know him,
I
yeah,
can't I can't.
that's your mistake.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Like I can't
No,
do
that's
that.
the only reason why that deal worked out is because
Yeah.
I'd known the kid and
Yeah.
good kid, good family, and all that. So I was, but yeah, oh no, if it was just some guy coming off the street, and that's why honestly, like today, like I don't take trade-ins on clubs at my course now. I don't sell used clubs. Now I've got 3 golf bags full of putters and wedges and stuff that were lost throughout.
Uh-huh.
And we always get rid of them. I always usually take them down to there's a thing called the first tee, and they let underprivileged kids play golf basically for free at this course down in Little
Oh,
Rock. And
yeah.
so I donate clubs down there all the time for people that they can throw like sets together for these kids.
Yeah.
So for years and years and years, we've always donated the lost and found. Like by the end of the year, if they haven't claimed them, they're gone.
Right.
I've got 3 golf bags full of clubs, wedges, and putters, just all sorts of stuff that found this year, right?
Right.
And I'm seriously thinking about just putting them on eBay and selling them for $50 a piece or $25 a
Why
piece.
not? Yeah,
And you
whatever's
pay
right.
the shipping, so and just see, because there's so much I could make on that. Just, but yeah, if I don't know you, like I have no problem taking advantage of you. That
Right.
sounds bad, but
Yeah.
no, I'm not going to do that to someone that I know or a friend. Not even a friend, but friendly. Like I know them and they're good
Yeah.
people. I have no problem working with them. But if I don't
Well,
know you,
it's
I'm going to take advantage. If you're going to make a fool of yourself, I'll let you make a fool of yourself.
well, I mean, I was careful not to do it, in a business sense, right? Because that you'll also get a rep that way. But
Absolutely.
especially any type of personal deal, if I don't,
Yeah.
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 But yeah, you were talking about putting the tires on the Durango.
Yeah.
So the used car lot where we got this Kia, we bought I bought multiple cars from them over the years,
Hmm.
multiple. And in fact, I stopped in because I actually, my website issues have been having. I actually host their domain and stuff still to this day, um, just because he shifted it over to somebody else once before, and it cost us about 8 grand to get everything sorted out. Right, so he don't want that to happen anymore. So even though I'm out of business doing that, he just insists. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying,
Sure.
that I keep tabs on it for him.
Sure.
So anyway, and it's not a big deal. I mean, he pays the bills. I send him, whenever they're
Yeah.
due. But anyway, I stopped by to tell him that I was having server trouble and that if he had any issues, to be sure to let me know.
Did he have any
Keep
issues
me
so
keep
far?
me posted. He said he hadn't so far, but
Good.
he
Good.
asked me about the car,
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
so anyway, I went through the whole story what we talked about earlier. But no, what I was gonna say is when I bought that car. I looked at it. He mentioned it. I looked at it. Come home, talked to my wife, talked to a bunch of people, talked to the bank. Went back up there, and he's like, "Well," and I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "What was the price?" And anyway, he looked up. He told me, like, "Yeah, uh, deal." I said, and I, picked up my phone and I was scrolling through it, and I said, "Let me call and tell them to cut you a check." I said, "But before you do," I said, I don't buy a car without tinted windows." And he had already picked up the phone. He's like, "I'm already on the phone. They're here. Tell them to come get it. I know you don't you
Yep.
don't buy cars without tinted windows.
No,
I
I get it.
know. I'll get it over there for you."
Yep.
you know,
It's
you
one
know,
of those. Everyone has
like,
whatever they have, like the little
yeah,
things that they want out of a car, and for me, like I said, I don't want new
like I,
tires. Just
what
give me
are we
decent tires,
in the 1970s? I mean, come on, like
right, right.
it's freaking, whatever it was, 2020. It's like you, you tint windows on cars. Like it boggles my mind seeing people drive around in new vehicles without tinted windows. Like
Yeah,
seriously, it's like, do you realize the amount of work your air conditioner's having to do
yeah.
and stuff? You know what I mean? When you just tint the windows.
Or especially if you have like leather seats. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
people don't
yeah.
realize that straight sunlight on leather seats will
Mhm.
will eventually, crack them, and
Oh,
you're
it'll
gonna have
yeah.
to put conditioner on them all the time.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep, yep. Makes a
Yeah,
huge difference. But yeah.
yeah, it's pretty funny. Yeah, I've already picked up the phone. I know you want tinted windows.
Like I
But that's the
got it.
cool thing, and we talk about
I
some of the
got
stuff
it.
that happens in the South that I don't know that they don't, but I suspect a lot of the stuff that we do in the South, they don't do up north because they're not as trusting up there, and I think the people down here are probably more
Yeah,
trustworthy.
yeah,
But more importantly, especially where like you live and where I live now are small towns, and
yeah,
there's only 3, 4, 5 car dealerships around, and probably the owners or the GMs or at
mhm,
least the salesmen at all of them.
yeah,
And
right.
after a while, you kind of, especially if you go through cars and
Mhm.
and they get to know you, and the cool thing about that is one, there's respect both ways. I go into it, so look, I know you got to make money on this,
Right.
but you don't have to maximize your money
Yeah.
on every deal.
Well, this still he didn't make money. I mean, uh
No, what I'm saying is, but
I seen
that
what he had
happens
in
in the
it, but
South is
yeah,
is is they're willing to do better
yeah.
deals when they know you
But it
personally.
was yeah, Yeah.
you know.
This was a deal where it was beneficial to him because this was we just got back from SHOT, right?
Yeah, you rented a car
In
that time.
2020. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We just got back from SHOT from that trip because we got it in February, so we had just got back, and so right at the height of like income tax season, which is like the season for buying cars, right?
Yep,
So
absolutely.
many car lots have tax people in
Yep.
house right
Oh
during that
yeah.
time and everything else. And the thing was, he had this car that was 3 times more than definitely twice as much as most of the other cars on the lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, it's just he's just like, he had 2 to 3 times tied up in that car, I should say, which was still way less than it was worth.
Yeah.
But he had 2 to 3 times. So, even him selling it to me for what he had in it, you know, he ended up making more money
Sure.
because he turned around and put that into 3 cars
Right. Right.
that he could
Exactly.
double his money on, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So,
Yeah.
and there's no way he was gonna double his money on that one car. So,
No. You're talking about um selling your truck to that kid, and you knew the dad back in the day, and your son knew him, and it's interesting. When my daughter turns 16, so my daughter is an interesting cat. I love her to death, but she's interesting. She's the only 16-year-old I knew that didn't want to drive. Like she
my kids were
enjoyed,
not big into it, honestly.
she no, she's like I am now. She loves driving, but like, when she turned 16, she was very okay with me and her mom driving her around,
Yeah, yeah,
But anyway,
yeah,
so we told her, said, look, like, you have basketball practice at 6 a.m. So I'm not getting up anymore and taking you to practice or whatever. So you are gonna drive. Anyways, so she turned 16, and we're talking about small towns and knowing people and all that. And so we kind of started driving around one night, the car lots, because here's the thing: when I'm looking at cars, I know this is going to sound weird. I don't want to look at cars until I find the one that I want. I don't want to look at cars while the car dealerships are open.
mhm,
I don't want to
right,
be hassled. I just want to look around. So it was like 7, 8 o'clock at night. All the dealerships are closed. We would drive around and we just kind of walk around the dealerships and try to look at the used cars and see what they had and this, that, and the other. And then if we found one, then I'd go and talk to them later
mhm,
on. And we found a couple cars that, she liked, that were, in the price range we were looking for and all that. And so the next couple of days I was talking to someone at work, and he was like, "Oh, are you looking for a car for your daughter?" And I was like, "Yeah." He said, "Blah blah blah," and he's like, "My neighbor has got a car, and my daughter loves hatchbacks. So let's
yeah,
preface this: she likes
right,
hatchbacks and all that. So she wanted a hatchback of some sort. It's easy, especially it's easy for like putting softball
oh yeah,
bags and all that stuff. It's
yeah,
just easy,
totally, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
she was all about a hatchback, which I think is hilarious for a 16-year-old girl want a hatchback, but it is what it is. I was okay with it. And so he's all my neighbor's got one that he's putting out in the front yard. He put in the driveway and put a for sale sign on. You ask him about it, and I was like, "What kind of car is it?" And he goes, "I have no idea. It's a little black cube car." Like, what do you mean a cube car? It's like, I don't know, it looks like a freaking cube. And it's lowered, it's all blacked out and tinted. It's a pretty sweet looking car. And I was like, oh, okay. And so the next day he comes over, he was like, yeah, talk to him and here's his number. And I was like, okay. And he's like, he said he's gonna put some stuff on Facebook. So here's his name. He said you can friend him on Facebook, and he'll have some pictures of the car on Facebook. I was like, okay, whatever. So I go on Facebook and I friend the guy, and he accepts. And so there's pictures of this thing, and it's a Scion
ah,
XB,
yeah,
and a little Scion XB, and it's a hatchback cube car, and it's like I said, it's lowered, it's all blacked out, black tinted, dark windows, black wheels. And it's actually pretty sweet looking. And so I said, well, do you mind, like, my daughter doesn't get out of practice until, let's say like 5 or 6 o'clock tonight. He goes, oh yeah, yeah, just come on anytime. I was like, okay. And so we go over to this guy's house. My wife and I drive her over there, and we ended up knowing his wife. Like, I didn't know that she had remarried or something.
mhm,
And she's like, it was like one of her old teachers or something like that, I think. And she was like,
Yeah.
"Hey, Sky," and she was like, "Hey," and we're like, "Oh, hey," and all that, and so she's like, "Yeah." And once again, they said, "Here are the keys. Drive it around. Go take it around, and go
Right.
to
Yeah.
McDonald's or something." You know,
Yeah.
like once again, that's normal around here, and you're used to it. But like people in Chicago or New York would never do that. But like, "Here are the keys. Just go drive around. Come back in an hour or so." You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we went down, drove it around, and went to Sonic or something, whatever. Let her just drive it
Yeah.
around town, and
Yeah.
came back, and she liked it a lot, and my wife and I liked it a lot, and so I was like, all right, and I was like, well, yeah, I think she's interested. What are we asking for it and all that? And he was like, oh, we're looking for like 10,000 for it or something like that. And I was like, okay. And then all of a sudden, like his wife, who was like one of Sky's old teachers, like
Mhm.
back in like third grade teacher,
Yeah.
so it'd been a while,
Right.
and like a third grade teacher or something. She goes, hold on. She goes, I used to teach this little girl. Blah 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 blah. She goes, what do we owe on it? And he goes, we owe six. And she goes, how about you give us 6 grand? And you can see
Right.
like the husband's face was like, huh?
Uh,
like, like, so like we got a great deal, and we didn't have to negotiate anything like the wife
right.
did because it was one
She
of her
did
old
it.
teachers, and she's like,
Yeah.
"What do we owe on it?" He goes, "I think we
That's
owe like
awesome.
6 on it." She goes,
That's
"We'll take
awesome.
6 for it, and so we got a
Yeah.
hell of a deal on the Scion, and
Mhm.
and it was so funny because he was like, "What the hell just happened?"
Oh,
Like
yeah.
I was supposed to negotiate with this guy, not
Like,
with you,
like, like
And
what?
so we're like, "Are you
Yeah.
sure?" And she
Funny.
and she was like, "Absolutely," blah blah blah. We once again, we know you, we know who it's going to. I'll get to see that car every day at school, and blah 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 blah. She had that all the way like through college and all that until she bought this car a couple of years ago. She had it all the way for she had it for a while.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it was one of those things like once again in the South, stuff like that. "Hey, what do we owe on it? 6. Ah, we'll take 6 for it. And just like
Well.
the funniest thing was is the guy's face because he wasn't
Yeah.
he didn't care, but the initial thought was his initial look was like, what? Like, why are you negotiating this?
Right.
It was hilarious. But she was
Yeah.
like, yeah, we know you, and we'll see the car. I get to see the car at school. We know who's gonna get it and all
Yeah.
that. So like, we got it for 6 grand. It was awesome.
Yeah. I went and looked. I've off and on went through the motorcycle phase, and
Oh, see, I
I
love
went to
motorcycles. I'm terrified of them, but I'll talk
well,
about that later. Yeah, you go ahead and tell your
yeah.
story.
Well, I think I'm probably phased out at this point in my life. I've seen too many things, but
Yeah.
and lost friends actually. Um, but anyway, a buddy of mine went to look at a Goldwing one time,
Oh yeah.
and drove up, and there it was, and yeah, he's like, yeah, drive it around, check it out. And I didn't have a sign of a motorcycle license, like
Right.
nothing. This dude's
Yep.
like, go drive it
No.
around. Like,
Yeah.
and I did. Don't get me
Sure.
wrong, I did.
Sure.
But I'm like, man, if only he knew, like,
Yeah.
you know, like
And he
I got
probably,
nothing.
yeah. No, I get it. I have been on one motorcycle in my life, and I was probably 12, 13, somewhere in there.
Uh,
10, 13, somewhere in that
never
age
had
group. I
dirt
don't remember.
bikes or
Nope.
stuff,
Now,
really.
no, no. I grew up in a suburbia.
Yeah.
Now a bunch of my friends had families had ranches and they had dirt bikes and all. But once again, this happened. I was like 10 or 11 years old.
Mhm,
My uncle got a brand new Harley,
mhm.
and he came over and wanted to take me on a ride for it. And he literally had like just gotten it, like the day before,
Yeah.
and come over to show my dad, and so let's go for a ride. And I was like, okay. He wasn't really my uncle, but he was like my dad's best friend, so I always call him uncle, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
And anyway, so like he's like, "I jump on real quick." I was like, "Oh hell yeah,"
Right.
you know. And he laid it down, and everything was fine. The bike wasn't not hurt. We weren't hurt, but I was scared to death. And the first time you're ever on a motorcycle, and he lays it down, right? And it's like so. Ever
Wow.
since then, I've been just terrified of motorcycles. Now I love them. As a matter of fact, like I would love to own. It's like my favorite motorcycles are Indian Scouts. I think the Indian Scout is a gorgeous little cruiser
Oh yeah.
bike, right?
Mm.
And no, I should say this. I've ridden mopeds, but I mean, what the hell can you do with a moped, right?
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't consider a moped a bike.
No.
So,
No.
anyway,
Not at
so
all.
I would love to own an Indian Scout one day. I don't know that I'd ever drive it,
Right. Right.
or ride it, I should say.
Hmm.
And maybe one day I do get over that fear, but absolutely, I
Yeah.
love motorcycles,
Well,
but I am absolutely terrified of them.
so with me, it's not. I don't have a fear of me or anything. It's just I've known. I can think of three right off the top of my head that these people they live to ride motorcycles,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
they weren't like me. They weren't the weekend warrior.
Hmm.
Let's go out every now and then and cruise guy. They literally grew up, were in clubs, lived
Yeah,
to ride bikes,
sure.
right?
Yeah,
And some other moron is the
yeah.
reason they're no longer on this planet. You know what I mean?
And that's
And if
typically
and
what
if a
happens.
and if a seasoned veteran biker, right, gets creamed by somebody, what are
Something's
the
gone
odds?
wrong.
What are the
Yeah,
odds I'm going to get creamed by
yeah.
somebody? And that's
No, I hear
my
you.
thing.
Yeah.
It's like,
Hmm.
it's always coming. Like I said, I can think of three right off the top of my head, and it's always coming in phases where that would happen, right? And
And being
then
that you were a
a
volunteer
few
firefighter,
years.
so you probably saw
Oh
some
yeah, yeah, yeah.
crashes.
Yeah, two of the three that I'm talking about, plus some other stuff. But two of the three I'm talking about, yeah, I was one of the ones that responded, and one of them was absolutely gruesome.
Yeah.
And that's the one that broke me. That's the final one that broke me. I actually went to school with it was a man and his woman, and they were coming back from a Christian biker retreat, right? And so they'd split up, and they were headed home. They weren't but like 4 miles from the house,
Oh,
um,
wow.
and they were almost home. And like I said, seasoned bikers. These people rode bikes as long as I can remember. They
Yeah.
were they were biker people, right? And she survived. He didn't. But I spent the night over at their house. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh,
I went
yeah.
to school with their son.
Yeah.
And so that messed me up to the point like I'm done. Like I'm
Yeah.
like you. I mean, they're beautiful, they're cool, and I may ride one occasionally on a closed track, or I'll ride a
Right.
dirt bike around somewhere or something. I'm cool with that. But yeah, 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 down the highway with other people, no, And but that it was always a cycle up until that one, right?
Yeah.
That something would happen, and you're like, and you would chill for, especially when you've got kids in the house, right?
Yeah.
And you would just chill for a little bit, and then you would kind of get over it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And not a big deal. I'd start looking at other bikes. I looked at multiple bikes and almost bought a motorcycle multiple times, and it never fails that something else would happen, and something
Yeah.
else would happen, and when that happened. Even right now, no kids in the house, right? My
Yeah.
wife and I could get on it and cruise and whatever.
Yeah.
I'm like, I got no interest. Like that broke me. I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah. You know, I love the Indian Scout. Love the Indian Scout. There's a bike that I think is beautiful. I don't remember the year, and I might even be wrong on the model. But there was like a maybe early 70s BMW, like R90 or R something. It was R75, R90, something. It was an early 70s BMW bike. And our neighbor had one, and it was gorgeous, gorgeous, just a beautiful bike. One day, like I said, either that or the Indian Scout. But my daughter loves motorcycles, but she likes the crotch rocket. She likes like the
Mhm.
Kawasaki's, like the freaking crotch rockets, right?
Yeah, the
I
ninjas and the
don't know why.
katanas and
Yeah,
stuff.
she's
Yeah,
like 5'1", 100 pounds, and I don't understand, but she wanted to buy a motorcycle one time. And I was like, "You're out of your damn mind! Like you are
right.
out of your damn mind!"
Hmm.
And I said, "You're not even able to hold that damn thing up, And
Right.
just joking with her, but I bet you she'll have one in her life. I'll guarantee it eventually.
The thing I've rode a lot of bikes, and I love the crotch rockets,
Yeah,
because they're fast mainly.
yeah, that's what
Um,
she likes about them.
but
She got that from me. She likes speed.
they're so uncomfortable. The people that
Yeah.
daily drive those, like, I don't know how they got
Oh
them back.
yeah.
I don't know how they got
Yeah, I
them
don't
back.
know either.
I don't understand it.
Like I
Um,
don't I don't want like a cruiser. Like I don't want one a cruiser, but like a scout or some of those that are kind
well, I
of like
want
I want something that I can ride and have fun, but I don't want like the highway cruiser one either, if I ever
so
got one.
so look it up one time. Look up a Yamaha. Midnight Virago or Virago Midnight Special, maybe is what they
Hold
call it,
on here.
right?
Let me get on here. Let me just look this up
Um,
real quick.
I looked
So
at
what
one
is it
of
now?
those Yamaha Virago, and specifically, it's usually called the Midnight Special or the Midnight Virago. Um,
Midnight Special.
but those
Oh
are,
yeah, that's beautiful. That's
yeah,
beautiful.
aren't they? I mean, they're old. I mean, you're talking like early '80s or
And
something.
that kind of reminds me of like the Scout
Yeah,
style.
yeah, yeah. And I looked at one. I looked at one time um, that I almost bought, that I almost
Oh
did
yeah,
buy. And yeah, that's always been like if I was gonna get one, like I don't know the new stuff I don't care much about or whatever.
yeah,
But there's just something about the styling on that one and everything.
yeah, yeah. That's a pretty cool bike.
It's kind of like a Harley, but then you got it's Yamaha, so it's gonna freaking run forever and not rattle bolts loose. And
Yamaha, seriously. So we talked about this before, like the Chevy 350. Like people, you can say what you want about Chevy. There's a lot to be said about Chevy, but that Chevy 350 very well could be like the greatest all-around engine ever built, right?
oh yeah, yeah, without a doubt, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Same thing with Yamaha small engines.
Oh, especially Honda
Like
though too, man. You can't discount those.
Yamaha,
But
yeah,
Honda maybe.
I'll say the Japanese, but you know,
Yeah,
like my
yeah.
my more of my experiences with Yamaha, but
Mhm.
like the Japanese, even with the Toyotas and all that, like they have it figured out. Like their engines are just so good. Like they'll
Especially
never, if you do
small engine,
just
right?
regular maintenance on them, they
Yeah, yeah,
will
yeah.
last forever.
That's the thing about, and I think maybe it's just because of their government and their culture and a lot of other things.
But see,
It's
they don't
it's
have
they've
V6s and
mastered.
V8s over there.
That's
They
what
have
I'm
small
saying.
cars, so they've
Like
mastered that small engine.
you
Yeah.
think American muscle car, you think
Hmm.
huge bore horsepower,
Hmm.
all this. Then you think about the Japanese stuff, and for small engines, they made some badass stuff
Oh yeah.
and still do for small
And
engines.
they can get the most
Yeah,
out of a small
out of it.
engine,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
whether it's
definitely.
turbo or whatever, like they figure out a way to take this small engine and still get in crazy amount of power if they wanted to, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's kind of cool, but yeah, those yeah, I probably never will own one, but I'm never going to say never. You never know. I don't see like I said, I've got other cars that I want to get now
Hmm.
that will take precedent over, you know,
Yeah, I'm pretty
motorcycles. You can get a
sure.
motorcycle for
Yeah.
15, 20 grand. Well, I could get
Well,
two cars, if like older cars that I could have fun with and mess
mhm.
with for 20 grand, you know?
Well, and I'm I'm never gonna say never,
Right.
obviously, but
Yeah.
which is an
But
oxymoron in
it's
a way,
likely. Yeah.
but I'm pretty sure I'm at this point I'm broken. Like
Yeah.
it's fun to wish and want, and I
Yeah.
think that just will forever be a wish and a want.
You know, I was talking with my wife and she knows that I love little roadsters. Obviously, the Z4 is a roadster. I love roadsters. You know, I think it all goes back to that Porsche 356. I just think that's the most beautiful car ever.
Yeah,
So I love
yeah.
the MGs. I love those Triumphs, though. Those small convertibles, and I think that I can see myself either a Triumph like TR6 or an MG Roadster. I can see myself getting one of those this year and you know, for $5,000 to $6,000 and just drive it on weekends with the top down and stuff and have fun with it. I'd have more fun. It sounds bad. My old ass age, I feel like I'm old. I'm not, but you know, but I think that I'll have more fun with that than I would a motorcycle. I don't think that I would truly enjoy a motorcycle. Like I'd be wasting money on it. You know what I'm saying? Like I wouldn't ride it if I ever did ride it because I'm scared. But if I ever got over that fear, I still don't ever think that I would ride it enough. I can go get, you know, a little convert. I can go get a little Miata for $5,000 if I wanted to, or you know, but I would like a '70s MG or something like that, a Triumph. Spend $5,000 or $6,000, spend maybe a couple $1,000, you know, fixing some stuff up. But I could enjoy that the hell out of that on a weekend. I'd drive that much more than I would a motorcycle, you know.
Right, right.
Like I said, I love motor. I think they're beautiful. Some of them. I'm not a big Harley guy. I mean, there's some Harleys that are nice, but I'm not a huge Harley guy.
Oh, they're cool. and it's like American Muscle, and that
Yeah.
sort of thing. But everybody I know, as a matter of fact, I met a buddy in town. When was it? Monday. It was last month. Well, what is the date? No, it was this Monday. And he had just bought. It was used, but he had just bought a Harley.
Yeah.
And so anyway, we he wanted to show it to me. He was like, "Hey, stop by. I'm here at the McDonald's. Stop by." And anyway, he just wanted to show it off,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's he's had a few, and I mean he says the same thing. All the people I know, and longtime bikers and everything
Yeah.
else, they're like, "You better carry some wrenches and stuff with you if you're on a Harley because you're gonna have to tighten bolts and
Yeah.
screws,
I've
and
heard
like
that. I've
you've
heard that a
got to
lot about them.
constantly tighten stuff up with them." It's like they're
Yeah.
not bad or anything. It's not anything bad
Yeah.
about them, but like my gosh, there's so much vibration and everything that you know.
Yeah.
Uh, that's just one of the things you got to do. But
Came. Yeah.
they all of the backers that I know, right? They that's part of the enjoyment I think of it
I
for them too.
probably.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they like every time that they stop to get fuel or whatever, breaking out some wrenches and tinkering or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I
You
guess
know,
that's part of the appeal. My mechanical prowess, so that would not be something that I would enjoy. So, or lack thereof, I should say. People that don't know me, I don't know shit about mechanics. I can change the oil, I can change spark plugs, I could probably put brakes on if I needed to. But when it starts coming about how things work together and like something down here is broken, and that's not a big deal, but it causes three different things down the line to not work right. Like I don't have a clue about any of that stuff. I don't know how things work together. So now tightening stuff up, yeah, it just doesn't sound like something that I want to do. I found a video. And probably it's been 2 hours. We can probably get done with this, but um, so yeah. By the way, thank you for coming on. I've had an interesting day, and it was nice to just relax. So thank you for that.
yeah, fun.
But I came across a video on YouTube, and I don't watch motorcycle videos very often, hardly ever, unless they're just happen to be something cool, like or something. Anyways, this
Right.
video pops up in my feed, and obviously my car channel feed is all car stuff that pops up. So um, on this channel, I should say, we're on this channel now. So, but anyways, this pops up, and it was like this cute little early 20s, mid 20s girl, and it was I went to Sturgis by myself, and I was like, wow, that's dangerous. A good looking early 20s girl going to Sturgis by herself. And I was like, okay, I gotta watch this, right? And obviously it turned out, everyone was very welcoming, and you hear horror stories about stories up at Sturgis, which is like the biggest motorcycle show in the world up in, I think it's South Dakota. And it's like it's a whole week thing, and it's this huge thing. But I mean, there's some serious biker clubs up there that they're going to be drinking and having fun. They see a good looking girl, and it could get a little rough and all of that. So she was nervous and all of that, but she had a great time, this whole thing. But it was kind of what you're talking about, is like every time that she stopped, like I think she's from Georgia, maybe. So
Hmm.
she rode all the way from like Georgia all the way to South Dakota for Sturgis. And everywhere she stopped, she's on a bike, and so people are like looking at this good looking girl on a bike. But all of it was basically, hey, you heading to Sturgis? I'm like, yeah, or so are we. Well, why don't you ride with us for a little bit? She's like, oh well, yeah, I can do that. Just so she'd have someone there, and they're like looking at her bike, and I think it's kind of like a car thing, I guess. Like people just want to see,
Oh yeah,
what do you have? And oh man, a buddy of mine has that. Did you do this to it? Oh yeah, I did that. And what kind of upgrades have you done? And all that. And it's the same thing. But they have like their own little biker language, and they have
oh
their own
yeah,
biker like little things that they do and rituals and all of that. And
oh yeah,
not being a biker, it was kind of interesting to see that kind of world, and see, okay, well, car people and gun people and whatever your hobby is in life, we all have our little things, and it's
right.
you know, it was just kind of cool. And so she like GoPro the whole thing. It was like an hour-long video that she, time lapse and all that, but
Wow. Wow.
it was kind of an awesome thing to see this whole trip to Sturgis and all that, and, she would ride for about an hour with some people, and she met up with this other girl, like, in Ohio or something,
Mhm.
and girl and her boyfriend and a couple of his, there's like 4 of them, and she was a girl, but she was riding, not with him, but she on her own bike. And so they were filling up, she was filling up gas, and this other girl was like, "Hey, you going to Sturgis?" She's like, "Yeah." She goes, "Hey, what's your name?" And so they started talking, and so she rode with them for a while, and it was just kind of a cool thing. It's like, that's the great thing about America is like we could just get in our cars and go, man. Like we can just go wherever the hell we want to, and meet up with people that have similar interests with us, and that's kind of what I love about, like, we're talking about doing the bullet run and stuff. But I don't want to drive to shot because I want that's a long ass drive, and I know you enjoy it. But
Yeah.
I think one of the
Yeah.
reasons why you do
Fun.
enjoy it is the drive. Like you
Yeah, I
get to
do.
see the country, you get to see cool things, and you get to meet people at truck stops, and
Yeah.
that's part of
Yeah.
the cool thing about where we live is we're able to do that, and just meet random people on the road and see
Mhm.
random things on the side of the road and
Well, and sometimes you
stop
don't
in
even
Winslow and stand on the corner.
right. Sometimes you meet people and you don't even meet people. I mean,
Yeah.
look at the ones we were running in the pack with coming back from South Carolina,
Yeah, exactly.
Like we
Never
didn't
saw their faces, everyone had tinted windows, never
don't
talked
know
to
who they
them.
were, but we were all literally an inch away from death for hours.
Yeah, and
you
and it
know?
was one of those things where there was no communication, and it just worked like clockwork.
Yeah,
It was like we
yeah,
had been driving together for a long time, and it was
yeah,
just one of the it was a cool thing. Like, that was a
yeah.
fun that's one of the
Not
most fun I've ever had in a car, honestly.
it's not very often that you get people that don't know each other,
'Cause you and I were
that get
doing
in
that
sync like
together
that.
for a while, and then we saw, like, I don't know if it was, like, the Mercedes or the Audi or whatever came up first
Yeah,
and passed us and got in
the
front of
Mercedes.
us, but you and I were kind of going that way, and then he joined in, and then, like, the Audi jumped in, and their BMW, like, they had, like, 5 or 6 at one point.
Yeah,
But it's like you said, like, we never saw any of 'em's faces because we all had tinted
never
windows.
never
We never
did. Yeah.
talked, we never gave hand signals. It was just a magical 2 hours of
Mhm.
just driving really fast.
Right. Yeah. Making a
Having
really good time.
freaking really good time, almost like we were cannonballing almost.
Almost. Yeah.
It's kind of
Yeah.
fun. Well, listen, it's been a couple hours and it's a Friday night, and like I said, I had an
Yeah, it is.
interesting day. I appreciate you coming on here, and I always have fun talking cars, and
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
it kind of gets us away from our normal stuff that we're always talking about. But I do want to give you time. Like I said, we both have. If you're out there listening in the podcast world, this is going to be on our podcast channel. If you're out there listening and you're interested in the guns, or might be interested in, or just want to watch people shooting guns, we both that's how we met. But that's how we do our thing normally is through our gun channels.
It's
Mine
how we
is
roll.
that's how we roll. Go check out his. His is Clover Tac. Clover TAC, all one word, Clover Tech, and mine is Ghost Tactical. If you're interested in that, go check us out and see what you like. And if you decide to stick around, then let us know that you found us through the car channel and all of that stuff. Um, but I want to give you, but you've got a couple different projects. You've got your CloverTech cards coming. You've got a 3D printer on the way, which you're going to be doing some cool stuff with. But you
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
multiple podcasts. Um, Go ahead and tell the audience out there that might be
You know,
listening in the future what you're doing.
I just got over on that Clover Tech channel. We're in the early 23 podcast season.
Yep.
Folks are into the firearm 2A thing. Card channels on hold pretty much until then. I mean, there might be something pop up now that they've canceled Showcase and some other things. There
Right.
might be something that pops up
Right.
one week, just a what do they call that? A sporadic thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the 3D printer. I mean, after you bringing that up after this chat, now I'm thinking with playing around with that Mustang.
Oh, I didn't think about that. What could you
what can I
do?
3D print for the
Or what can
Mustang?
you
I
do for
wonder,
what can you do for the Kia? Can you figure out a cell phone
or
mount
even
or
your
a
Beamer for that
or my
matter.
Beamer? Like, what kind of mounts can we
Right?
figure out? All sorts of stuff.
Who
Yeah.
knows what kind of neat things
If
we
I get
might
like an
can
old
do.
MG, I could use all sorts of cool mounts on that thing.
Right.
So
Yeah,
that
no
could be
kidding.
fun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, didn't think about the vehicle aspect of 3D
No,
printing,
neither did
right?
I.
But,
We
I
were talking
was
about
thinking
lightsabers earlier. That's kind of
yeah, we
cool.
were talking about all kinds of stuff, but never considered, some type
We're
of
both
parts for
Star
a
Wars
vehicle.
nerds, by the way,
So,
folks. Sorry. That's not
but,
like an ugly secret. I think a lot of people are Star Wars nerds. So
I think so.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, if you want to go check, the best way is probably clovertack.com. That'll
When
probably
it's
get
working,
you to when it's working. Well, this is true. He's had some server issues. I think you're moving hosting sites,
I'm
but
waiting on the domain to transfer as we speak. So they say 24 to 48 hours,
okay, so maybe by the end of
and
the weekend.
I've already got something built and waiting. It's not up to snuff
But
100%,
it's
but
something.
it's
Yeah.
waiting for the domain transfer. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. So go check out clovertech.com. Like I said, he's got the gun channel. He's got a trading card, sports card, whatever you want to call them, card,
Maybe a 3D printing channel
and
coming soon.
maybe a 3D printing channel. If you are, and I want to say this, if you're looking to get into the YouTube game, he has a channel called GunTuber Academy. Now, it is focused more on the gun side of YouTube and maneuvering through the weird swampy waters that is the firearms industry on YouTube. But there's still a lot of great information on starting up a channel and how to get rolling with any kind of channel.
Yeah,
It is
true.
focused on gun stuff, but there's a lot of awesome old podcasts. He used to have a podcast that was my favorite podcast. Was Thursday nights late night, and it was all about the nerd tech side of channels and SEO and websites and all that. So there's a lot of great information over on the GunTuber Academy. So if you're starting out in YouTube, go check out that channel, because even though it's more tailored towards gun stuff, there's a lot of great information on thumbnails and banners and tags and titles and all that stuff. It goes across all niches on YouTube. So go check that out as well.
Yep.
But yeah, I had fun. I don't
Yeah.
know how often I'm
Oh,
going to do this, but I actually we had the one that we did a week or two ago. I put it up on my podcast with my Armed Citizen podcast and Jarhead pod. I put it up there on Podbean and just threw it
yeah.
up there to see how it went. And in the last, since we uploaded it, is doubled is by far the most listened and downloaded
Ah,
podcast on the
that's
channel
pretty cool.
in that time frame.
Yeah.
Like
It's gonna be,
it's doubled or tripled the second place one. So it's kind of interesting.
something worth mentioning, and I mean, it will pop up on your podcast channel as well as mine. Is the Ghost and Clover coming
Oh
soon?
yeah,
So
absolutely. That's next Sunday.
it's portions of it may be similar to what we talked about tonight. A lot of the
Yeah.
stuff. I mean, you never
So
know.
Clover and I have been really good friends since 2017. And we both have our own channels. We both have our own podcasts, but we're frequent on each other's podcasts and channels and all of that. And we started this thing years ago called the Ghost and Clover podcast, just for fun, just us just shooting the shit, and not necessarily talking about guns, just whatever we wanted to talk about. And we've always talked about we should do this as a thing. And 5, 6 years later, we've actually done. We've secured sponsorships for it. So it actually launches the first official Ghost and Clover podcast.
It's
Starts
live.
out next Sunday, not this coming Sunday, but the next Sunday, at 8 p.m. Central. And
God
to
help us
start,
all.
I know. To start out, it will be on my channel, on his channel, and we do have a channel called Ghost and Clover.
Yeah.
And what will happen is we'll do the live podcast on all the channels, and as soon as it's over, we'll take them off of our personal ones, and they'll be archived on the Ghost and Clover channel. But obviously, it'll go to his podcast platform and my podcast platform.
Yep.
So it'll be
Audio.
fun.
Yeah.
But the cool thing about this is, will we talk guns? Sure, that's kind of we're gun guys. That's kind of the overall passion of this. But we both like music, we both like
Well,
cars, we both like food, we both like whatever. But the cool thing about the podcast is well, we're doing a fun platform where each of us are going to bring a topic, and we're going to have 15 minutes to talk on that topic, but we're not going to tell the other what that topic is. So he'll talk about his topic, and we have 15 minutes to discuss it, but I won't know what it is until
We talk
live.
about it. Yeah,
And
right.
then after that, we'll do a sponsor break, and then I'll do my topic, which he won't know what it is until
Yep.
I talk about it. And we'll have another sponsor break, and then we're gonna have a random topic that the audience, the live audience, will get to choose
Yep.
live,
Yeah.
and we'll have about 10 minutes to talk about that. So
And
it'll be fun.
well, then our topics can't be the same. So whoever
This is
starts
true.
the show, whoever has the second
So if he
topic.
talks about food, then I can't talk about food.
Yep.
I have to
Exactly.
talk about cars or
Exactly.
music or movies or
So you're
whatever.
guaranteed at least one section without guns, I guess.
This is true. I guarantee it. And to be honest with you,
It could
yes,
be
we
all
like,
three, but yeah.
yeah, because we both love guns, and but we talk guns on our normal other podcasts all the time. And I think
Yeah.
that's why we both enjoy this. Is it's going to give us a talk about other interests that we have in our lives. And I have a feeling, bro. I'm just saying. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of 3D printing talk because by the time next Sunday rolls around, you'll have your 3D printer. And I'm sure you've at least messed around with it by then.
Maybe a little bit. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not in a big rush. It's been 3 years or what? What is it? I don't even know. Maybe longer than that. I've been
Yeah,
talking about getting one.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm not in a big hurry. We talked about it kind of on the phone earlier with that, but I'm not necessarily in a big hurry. I am excited about it. Don't get me wrong, but
yeah.
I want to make sure I've got a good space set up to be able to do it, and I
Yes, I
don't
guess
want
it
to,
does take a while to get it set up and,
you
like you
know,
said, get
my
calibrated and
buddy,
balanced and
yeah,
everything else.
my buddy that helped me, put everything together because at this point I know nearly zero about 3D printing.
You know
Um,
about 1% more than I do.
yeah, I know zero, and it's still 1% more than you
Yeah,
probably. Yeah.
exactly.
But he helped me do that, and he's like, "Oh man, when I got my first one, I set it up on the kitchen table, and better. I don't want to do that. Like, I want to have a. I'm just that way, right? When it was, I was setting up my reloading stuff. It's the same way. I had to have the workbenches from that stuff, and I had,
Yeah.
so I
You
want
want
a
a
little
dedicated
area.
workspace and
I
everything
want it
else.
all
Yeah.
there. That way, I don't have the hassle of having to jack with things or something get messed up or having to
Yeah.
move something. It's all there. It's all ready to go. And so that may take, even though it's supposed to come in next week, I mean, that may take a week or so before I can get everything set up. But
Yeah.
I can assure you, once it's all set up, uh, we'll be printing something pretty quick. No telling what it liable to be. It may be who knows, a sculpture of a duck or something for all I know. But we'll print something. We'll find something to try to print on it for sure.
100%. Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff we were talking about earlier today on the phone about the possibilities are just literally what you can imagine. Like
Yeah,
whatever you can think of, you know,
yeah,
you can probably do it, to a
probably.
certain
Yeah,
extent and certain
yeah.
size, but
But
yeah.
I wasn't even, yeah, again, I wasn't even thinking about automotive. So
Mm.
I'm gonna be getting on. I probably won't sleep tonight. I'll have to get on and look up 3D plans for
Can
automotive
you
parts now.
here's something for you
I'm
because
sure there's stuff out there. I'm sure
oh,
there
I
is.
guarantee I bet you there's some cool stuff out there too. But here's something that you and I are kind of phone nerds a little bit too. You could probably create some pretty cool phone cases,
It's true.
you
Possibly, yeah.
know, um, or mounts for cameras or all sorts
Mhm,
of cool different things,
mhm.
all sorts of stuff. But yeah, I bet you I bet you get into the car forums. I bet you there's a whole bunch of cool stuff that we never even thought about for 3D printing for cars.
Yep, yep.
Mm. All right, let's get out of here. I appreciate you guys listening. Like I said, if you're out there and you're enjoying the podcast, let us know. Leave us a comment. Let us know if you're enjoying this podcast. I don't know if this is going to be a regular thing. I'm having fun with it, but it's kind of one of those things that get my mind off a lot of stuff sometimes. Like talking cars, like talking guns, like talking music, all that stuff. Check it out. Leave us a comment. If you like it, go ahead and give us a good rating or whatever on the podcast platform you're listening to. And we'll see you soon. Thanks.